And we are live. So, question for you before we start recording. Speaking of which, I should probably open up my Audacity. Get that done. So, we've talked about there's a particular Superman Christmas story you have picked that we've talked about reading and then doing for an episode in December.
Right.
I finally started putting together like a schedule today, just so I know, like, for example, when episodes should be coming out in the
Right.
future. And I think originally my idea was that we would do the Christmas episode as a bonus,
Right.
but I don't like bonus episodes because people typically don't listen to bonus episodes for some reason.
Okay.
Usually the episodes that aren't listened to as much. So I started looking at the schedule and I'm like, all right, well, if we stick that in on as December 16th episode, that's the last December episode before Christmas.
Right.
And it would make that episode 71. And then, of course, I started thinking, well, shit, we've already recorded all these other ones that come after it. And we've already opened each one saying, you're listening to the Superman Super Show, episode number 72. So if we do that, I may have to go in and just re-record the little intro bits for those other episodes.
Why not make it a decimal episode?
We can do that, but that fucks with my brain.
but why? It's a realistic number.
I know it is, but it
71.5 or 71.66 or if you want to really pull it off, make it a 71.69. Everybody would love that.
Jeez.
I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah, I could do that.
That'd be hella easier than going through 5 or 6 and re-recording that bit at the top.
Not really. I mean, I could do it. Let's see. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to be 4 episodes. As long as we do the new numbering, which I updated the show notes with the new numbering already.
Starting with this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That'll help.
I mean,
defray some of it.
I have started. I've started a schedule of sorts for recording, and I'm able to record something during lunch, Monday through Thursday. I keep Friday I get to have a real lunch on Friday, but Monday through Thursday I record something. So as long as I stick that in whatever notes I'm going to record during the week, I'll just record all 4 of those real quick and boom, just add them to the beginning of the episodes.
All that having been said, when do you want to record the Christmas thing?
Let me look,
and just record the one story.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would do that. I say we do it on an off week. So possibly,
which is
next week or.
Yeah, I was going to say it's getting close. Next week is off. And then the 7th of December is off. And then that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Otherwise we'd have to do it on the 14th and that would give me the weekend to,
Right.
So why don't we, for now, just plan on doing it next Saturday if you're available.
Okay.
I should be. I don't have anything going on. And if Rana isn't working, then we can get together a little earlier than normally. I don't know if she's working yet or not.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put it in at 11:30 for right now. Okay.
So I have started a new feed for the old Just Another Fanboy episodes. Because, I'd been putting them up here and there on the main Just Another Fanboy feed, but it's like when I was doing it there, I felt like I had to, re-edit them so they sound a little better, and I record a little bit for the beginning. And sometimes, I can go weeks and just like, I don't feel like doing any of that. I got other stuff to work on, right?
Right.
So I thought, well, why don't I just upload them as they are? Change nothing about them, upload them as they are up on their own feed. So they're out. I've got the first 90 episodes up right now under Just Another Fanboy Classics. And, it's funny because I knew that I was missing one episode. It's episode 130. It's the one episode right before the last episode I'm missing. I mean, I know I have 2 DVDs around here somewhere that has every episode on it. Right. I just can't find them. And then you sent me everything you had, which was everything except that one.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll just have to deal with that when I get to it. And so I'm uploading episodes, and then I get to episode 56, and I'm like, well, shit, episode 56 isn't there either. Oh crap, I'm missing another one. But then I found a DVD that had like the first 60 maybe episodes. Okay. So I'm like, all right, well, there's episode 56 right there. Actually, I think it had the first 80 because then when I get to episode 75, I don't have that one either. And I'm just scratching my head. I'm like, what the hell? And what I have been doing is, the Wayback Machine over on archive.org.
Right.
They have the old Just Another Fanboy website up there.
Oh, really?
I can't access any of the episodes because the episodes are all linked to Libsyn, and they deleted them long ago. But I have access to when they were published, all the show notes, that kind of stuff, the episode titles and junk. And so I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll just have to skip episode 75. And it's like episode 74 came at the end of, I don't know, it was like June 2008. So then I move over to July of 2008, and the first episode there is number 76. And I was like, what? And I had to double check, and I was like, oh, well, that's why I don't have episode 75. It doesn't exist.
Right. You didn't post it or
Well, whatever. The funny thing is I'm telling Karen about it because that's around the time that those episodes she was on the show, and she goes, oh, that's the one you took down. And I said, why did I take it down? She goes, because we were begging for money and we felt embarrassed about it afterwards. And I was like, oh, that's funny because I'm not ashamed to beg for money nowadays, but apparently back then we were embarrassed enough that we felt the need to take it down and delete it altogether. So yeah. So right now it does go from, I thought, well, should I renumber them then? Because that'll mess with my head. Yeah, I did. No. I didn't. So it goes from 74 to 76. And,
75 does exist. It just doesn't exist on the internet. That's all.
Right. Well, I don't have a copy of it. So
what, was there not a copy of it in the stuff I sent?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
I guess I downloaded everything near when you were saying that you were going to close up shop. So yeah.
So we would have deleted it. Yeah. Yep. So yeah. And then I thought, here's the funny thing is that as I've been putting them up, I haven't been listening to the full episodes, but I'll listen to chunks here and there. And I'm just like, oh my God, the sound is just horrible. There's this hiss in the background. I can hear it, and so I thought, all right, well, this will be fun. I'll get them all up in their original versions. That's season 1. And then maybe if I feel like it, when I have a week that I'm not doing anything, I'll start at the beginning and then I'll remix them and remaster them. And then I'll put those out as season 2, like episode 1 reboot or something. Because I'm also, if you go out to that feed, Just Another Fanboy Classic, it retains the old date. So like the first one shows that it was published in August of 2006 or something.
Right.
So yeah. So I thought that'd be kind of fun if I get around to it eventually. But I have, being able to record 4 times a week right now, I'm getting a lot of stuff done. I'm just not putting it out there yet. I'm getting backlog and all that crap. And yeah. Yeah, because I've also created a feed called Steven or Else Media Presents. And I went through because I have the first episode to the new season of Event or Else, talking about legends. That's done. And so I just kind of started going back and just quickly remixed and remastered the old episodes. And so I put the first season of that up on this new feed. And I figured as I just do crap like that, I'll just release shit on that feed as well. And
Sure.
And maybe Steven or Else will come back. Those old Steven or Else episodes that I've been using some old stuff and recording brand new stuff to put together new episodes. I got 3 ready already.
Okay.
Yep. What did we say last time? I'm like Billy D, except he finishes stuff.
He releases them. Yeah.
Yeah, he does it all. He's like,
Actually, he just announced this morning that he was going to close up his All-Star Squadron Infinity Inc. feed, or not the feed, the show.
Yeah.
Which basically just means he's not going to be releasing any more episodes for that right now. He's going to focus more on movies moving forward. So
cool.
That seems to be where his passion lies right now, is talking about movies.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So if we do that Christmas episode on December 16th, then the episode we're recording today will come out February 24th.
Okay.
And there may come a point in 2025, maybe in January or February, because if we keep doing this every 2 weeks, doing 2 episodes and only releasing them every other week, I may get enough of a backlog after the holidays. I may decide maybe we should start releasing them weekly again.
I would suggest just staying with 2 weeks. That way you stay ahead of it, because
it's probably a good idea.
You've got so many other projects that you're doing too, that if you can get ahead on one, then just get ahead on it and just stick with that. And
you're the voice of reason.
Well, I mean,
if I do them every 2 weeks, then I can do Hither Came Conan every 2 weeks on the opposite weeks,
right,
and stay current with that. I accidentally released that last episode on the same week as a Superman Super Show episode came out, so I'm waiting until next week to do the next one now. So
extra long week. Got to get that back on track.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, let me get to my show notes. And let me start recording. Do. Check. Okay, let me do like 15 seconds of silence. That's good enough.
Cool.
For my atmosphere. Yeah. And then I got that first season of Growing Up Geek coming out in a couple weeks. Really excited about that.
Cool beans.
I think it's coming together pretty well. And I've been to tease what's coming up in the second season. I recently watched Dragon Slayer and The Beastmaster.
Okay.
Beastmaster doesn't quite hold up. Dragon Slayer does for some reason, but The Beastmaster was so much fun. I mean, just watching that again, oh my God. And it's obvious that I watched it as a kid on like TBS. Never saw, I don't think I ever rented the movie, because I was quite surprised when boobies showed up in the movie. I was like, oh, that's Tanya Roberts and she's naked. I don't remember seeing that I would have remembered that as a kid.
TBS definitely ain't going there.
No, not at all. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do this. The following episode was recorded in front of a live streaming audience on Saturday, November the 16th, 2024. You're listening to the Superman Super Show, episode number 76, The Enemy Invasion. Hello and welcome to the Superman Super Show. I'm a host. My name is Steven, and 1,000 miles over there to my right is another host, Mr. Ed Moore.
Sup?
So, Ed, I wanted to thank you. I had noticed that you had updated the show notes for this and the next episode. That was actually a really big help, but it freaked me the hell out at the same time, and I'll tell you why. So I get up this morning and sit down and I read the story that we're going to talk about today for this episode and the story we're going to talk about for the next episode. I read those this morning. And then I sat down to get the show notes together and I accessed the show notes, which is a Google Doc that both Ed and I have access to. And I see that the first thing I notice is that little bit that I do that say the following episode was recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice it says today's date. And I was like, that's weird. And at first I thought, holy crap, because normally I just type over what's there from the last time we record.
Right.
So seeing that there, I'm assuming that's what was there the last time we recorded.
Yeah, that's.
And I said, oh, did I give out the wrong date last time? And I was getting ready to pull up the last recording just to see what I had said.
Yeah, to listen to it. Okay.
But then I noticed, well, hold on. This has the notes for the issue we're talking about today. And I would start scratching my head and I look down to the next episode and that's updated as well. And I'm like, when did I do this? I was really worried that I had gone into some kind of fugue state and was updating notes and had no clue.
I don't remember any of it. Yeah.
Well, but then I saw a little thing in there that showed that you're the one that had done it. And I was like, oh, that was so nice of him. And yet it freaked me out at the same time.
Well, see, what happened is I was up my time 6 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
And messing around. And I thought, well, I'll try to do something constructive. And so I just went in there and tried to update and change things and be ready. So
yeah. No, it was a big help. It was one less thing I had to do this morning because I always put everything off to the last minute. That's just the way I am. Yeah.
As long as you manage to get it done, it's not necessarily bad, but you know, it makes it rough if you're not able to get it done.
Well, it left me with a little time to just kind of chill this morning, basically, after I got over my freak out and realized what was going on. But I thought, you hit a certain age and you start to worry about things that, could I have done this and then just don't remember?
Yeah,
I mean, it's possible.
Forgot about it. Yeah, absolutely. And see, that's the scary thing. Yeah. 20 years ago, it's like, no, that's impossible. My mind is too good.
Yeah.
But now you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I start thinking, well, when would I have done that? Would I have just immediately finished recording last time and just thought, I'm going to go ahead and update these notes for next time? That was almost the hardest part for me, was trying to imagine why would I do that? I don't do stuff like that. I don't prepare early. I just don't.
See, and again, the problem is that you very well could have last time after we recorded, because that was 2 whole weeks ago.
Right.
Good luck freaking remembering what you did 2 weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I go to edit these episodes and get them, like the episode that's coming out for those watching the live feed, the episode that's coming out on Monday, which is episode 69, I go in to put in the name of the story into the show notes of the episode. I don't remember. I mean, it's been 3 or 4 weeks since we talked about it. Yeah, and so I have to, I start thinking, man, why do I keep deleting the previous show notes and putting new show notes in for when we record?
Yeah,
because the information's right there. So I got to pull the book back out and find the title and go back to Mike's Amazing World of Comics and get that information. And such a struggle for us to do podcasting these days.
I feel the pain. It is, yeah. Us old graybeards, we have our own unique set of problems. Yes.
Yep. And I don't know if I talked about it 5 weeks ago when we recorded. I don't know if I talked about it in an episode, but one of our cats had gotten out the morning that we were getting ready to record.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I don't remember which episode it was, but yeah, I remember you mentioning
it. It's been, I think my daughter said he had been gone for 5 weeks, but he came back Friday night, Thursday night, because I had gone out. You know, we have all these stray cats outside, so I had gone out at about 6:30 to go get Rana from work, and this cat comes up and starts circling my legs, and it's just meowing and meowing. And Manny, he looks like one of the other stray cats out there. So I just thought, what? You've got food, knock it off, leave me alone. And then I looked down, and I was like, holy crap, that's Manny. And we had a nice celebration in the house. I'm sure he'll visit at some point while we're recording, because when he's not sleeping, he has not left my side. He has been with me all time. You know, when I'm working, he's just laying on my stomach while I'm working. You know, I'll lean back. He's just like right here, and I'm working away. So I'm sure he's over there on the couch sleeping right now, but I guarantee you he will show up at some point.
Well, cool.
What's up with you? What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Not much of anything. Just a lot of uproar at work. So I am much gladder after every 8 hours to be able to come home and leave it, because it is rather draining, I guess, emotionally would be what it is. There's we have a new overall leader, if you will, and they inherited a buttload of problems that everybody felt should have been corrected as soon as they started. And now that those problems have not been corrected for, Julie has been in place for 3 months. Yeah, right at about 3 months. But the issues have been going on for 6-8 months before her. So everyone is finally reaching an end point of tolerance, unfortunately, after she has taken over. So we're losing. We barely have enough people to maintain what we need to do. Even so much so that 2 people that were on the phones and have been, let me take a step back. On the phones, I work at our 911 here in Mercer County.
Okay.
So on the phones are telecommunicators that take calls and dispatch units to emergencies. Our personnel levels are down such that 2 people that have been, actually for Thanksgiving, 3 people that have been promoted off the phones into office jobs are filling shifts so that we have enough people over the Thanksgiving holidays. That's how tight personnel has gotten because of overrunning problems, people getting fed up and leaving and whatnot. And so, going to work and hearing people, whether right or wrong, that's a whole nother discussion, but hearing people complain about issues that they don't directly affect me, but they indirectly do, because they affect the people that I work with, and they affect their morale, and their morale affects my morale. And so it's just this, I'm not necessarily involved. It's more a peripheral thing, but even on the periphery, it's just very draining to be in that kind of work environment. So here lately, I have been that much more, not that I didn't enjoy coming home, but now I enjoy coming home to get even away from that. And that's not a kind work relationship that you want. You don't have to like what you do to an extent, but you certainly have to like it to stay there.
Exactly.
I've been there 23 years, so obviously it's not gotten too bad for me. But it's just, I don't know. It's unfortunate, and there are changes on the horizon, but I don't know that the changes will come soon enough for some people, so we'll probably end up losing more people. And it's just
Yeah, change in a lot of work environments, change tends to happen really slowly.
yeah.
But and I have to imagine just the job itself is stressful enough.
It can be, of course, yeah. And yeah, most of the issue is a um, being tactful. Let's see. It's a discipline is the main issue that people had. It was lacking with previous leadership
Yeah.
to the extent that there was virtually none by the time that last person left. And so now the new incoming person has to deal with that and get discipline back in order, which of course is going to make people angry as well.
Yeah.
And so it's just this personnel issues. They're probably the toughest thing to deal with in leadership of any of the issues leaders will follow, personnel issues. And that's what we have, and we're just trying to work through them and get the ship tightened up to where it needs to be, and then we'll be able to move forward just fine. But the growing pains until then can be pretty substantial.
Yeah, I manage the department that I'm in, and I couldn't imagine coming into a situation like that as a leader, with especially if there were disciplinary issues that weren't being handled, and then that's something that you inherit.
Right.
And yeah, because you do have to kind of have to handle that a bit delicately, because you can't just start cracking down.
Exactly.
That's going to cause all kinds of problems. So you almost want to just say, all right, we're just starting fresh,
which
whatever you did before.
Right.
But if you start fucking around now, we're going to,
it's not a bad time, because we've got the beginning of a calendar year coming. So that is a very good time to say, okay,
yep,
I'll give you guys all of these things notice beforehand, and all of these things will go into place starting January 1. So, now if you're doing it right or wrong, and then come January 1, what'll happen if somebody has to point out to you that you're doing it wrong. And so, so that's what we're hoping for. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Work. My daughter, who's now working 40 hours a week, it's funny to hear her in the mornings going, I don't want to go to work, and it's like, welcome to the world.
And was she also one of these young people that couldn't wait to get out of school until that was the situation?
I don't think she was.
Okay.
I think I mean, she was and she wasn't. I think anybody is ready to get out of school and start what they think is taking control of their life. They don't understand until they get into it that, you have a little bit more control than you did when you were in school. But it's
right.
It's almost like you're leaving school and then going to another school. You're just getting paid for it, because the dynamics are usually, the pettiness and the bullshit is usually the same.
Yeah, as you get older, you find that you have more ability to say no, but that basically is the only more control that you have. You have very little more positive control. You just have the ability to say no. I'm not going to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something I've enjoyed about getting older. I've reaching an age where it used to be if a friend would call up and say, "Hey, let's go out to a club, let's go watch a band, or let's go do something," I'd be like, "I don't really want to, but all right, I'll go." But now I'm just like, nah, stop asking me. I'm never going to go out to
that's all. That's the end. It's like, okay, no, I don't want to do that.
I think I'd rather stay home and do nothing. Yeah.
There you go. It's
yeah. All right, you ready to start talking about this issue?
Let's do it.
Okay, so today we're looking at The Enemy Invasion, which is the Superman story that appears in Action Comics number 36. It was written by Jerry Siegel with art by Wayne Boring and Joe Shuster, and inks by Wayne Boring. Action Comics number 36 has a cover date of May 1942. but according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it has an on sale date of March 21st, 1941. Oh, I think that should be a cover
That
date
should
of May
probably be 42.
1941.
Yeah. Oh, I made a mistake.
No, I think
Oh.
we're still in 41. So
Okay. Yeah.
the cover date, yeah. We know what we're talking about. 1941. So here's what happened in the issue. Lois attends a meeting of the Volunteers for Peace, a group trying to stop rearmament. Lois speaks out against the group's leader, Stuart Pemberton, inciting the crowd to attack her. Superman arrives to rescue her and return her to the Daily Planet. Superman returns and overhears the plans to sabotage important strategic centers so that Nation X can attack. Superman races around Metropolis, stopping the saboteurs working with a foreign power. An attack force of planes arrives and begins bombing the city. Superman smashes the planes and forces the leader to order a retreat. Pemberton warns citizens to surrender during a radio broadcast. Lois tries to stop him, but she is captured. Superman rescues her again and takes out the traitor Pemberton. Ed, what'd you think about this one?
This pretty much showed you what World War II would have been like had Superman truly been involved. That was absolutely the thing that occurred to me. It's like, well, yeah, that's why DC had to do something to take him out of the equation, because if not, good luck doing anything with Superman patrolling the skies of Allied territory. I mean, the Allied lines could have just pushed on through and done whatever they wanted to with Superman in the sky covering them. What's the problem? Yep. But yeah, you definitely, if you had any questions why before, I mean, he's still Superman. But here we finally get to see him go up against a scenario that very well could have occurred in World War II in Europe or over the Pacific, whichever. And you see that, if Superman had been involved, it would have been no bueno. Yeah. So I did enjoy it. I liked that it was, it seemed to me that it had a little bit different flavor than what some of the, not the more recent, but some of the earlier books have had. They definitely have shifted in tone. About, I don't know, about 2/3 of the way of the stories we've covered. This last third seems to have kept this different, maybe more adult kind of tone, but not chicka chicka bow wow kind of adult kind of, not that kind of adult, but just maybe adult, sophistication maybe would be a better word, something like that. Although I did think that, gosh, there were a lot of people that bit it in this story.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, they really don't show at the aftermath or the destruction of the bombing. And if it wouldn't have been for the narration, or I guess there's a radio guy at one point that talks about the bombing, I just kind of almost assumed at first that Superman happened to get there in time to stop the bombs. But no, there's some major destruction according to the radio guy. We just don't ever see it. So I have to assume just from the bombing, all kinds of people had died from that.
I don't imagine that there was much in place in Metropolis at the time to warn of something like that, so the people didn't get any warning.
Yeah.
That,
and really for the time, this probably was considered a very political issue.
Sure.
Because the whole subject of rearmament, this is, World War II is going on. It's happening. It's all over there in Europe. And there are, there's the faction of Americans that want to get into the war. And they're the ones, I guess, who support rearmament. And then there's the faction of Americans that don't want to get into the war. So it's none of our business. Let's stay out of it. It's over there. It's not over here. We don't need to worry about it. And so this guy Pemberton is taking that and I guess trying to use it to their advantage as Nation X, which I find it kind of funny that when it comes to the subject of rearmament, I think anybody at the time reading this knows exactly what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So for them not to just straight up use Germany or the Nazis, but
Right.
because we've talked about this before, whenever they have one of these fake nations that they never name trying to come in and take over, we know at this point that they're talking about the Germans. We know they're talking about the Nazis, but it's like DC was willing to mention rearmament. They were willing to go to that level, but they didn't want to go
Right.
the step above at this point.
Right. That's all.
And I'll be interested to see if Germany is ever mentioned before America actually goes into the war,
Mm-hmm.
and how these comics change at that point. Because I know we always see, like, we have that issue of Captain America #1 where Cap's punching Hitler in the mouth.
Right.
It's like I don't quite know or recall how they handled any of that with DC Comics, especially Superman. So it'll be interesting to kind of get into that at some point, which is about half a year away, maybe, because this would have been March, I think we said.
Right.
So yeah, we're getting
So
there.
we've got about the next 3-ish, 2.5 to 3 years of stories will be smack in the
And
middle of it. So
yep.
we'll have an opportunity to see how it was handled. Speaking of which, now the rearmament um, question was a cover for these people.
Yeah.
So by the end of the story, Lois and Clark and the paper still really can't be seen to have taken a side one way or the other. And by extension, the people at DC, because I believe
Yeah.
that the writers at DC are represented by Lois and Clark in the paper, what
Yes.
they do and say.
Most definitely. Yeah.
That's our point of view. So even though they brought it up and they mentioned it and they set it up to look like, well, Superman was anti-rearmament. In truth, no, because the rearmament was just a cover. It's really not what these people were after. So Superman was able to get in there and beat them up and
Well,
still not show a side.
this is where I was kind of torn on the whole thing, because really it's Pemberton and his group are, they're supposed to be, this was what, the Volunteers for Peace.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually speaking out against rearmament.
Right.
And there's a point here on page 2 where Pemberton says, I'll go further than that. I'll wager that the reason Metropolis newspapers are supporting national rearmament is because they're receiving secret payoffs. And that's when Lois gets all pissed off
Mm-hmm.
and charges the stage. So they don't actually come out and say that the Daily Planet supports rearmament, but obviously some newspapers in Metropolis do. So we don't know at this point. And it's really kind of a weird thing to think about, because I think I don't know, there's that part of me that's like, I mean, I would never really be in support of war in general, right? So the idea of just simply throwing money at national defense doesn't always appeal to me. But at the same time, hindsight's 2020, and this was one of those wars that we were battling evil, right? The Nazis were evil. They wanted to
Right.
take over the world. So it's kind of like a war that, whether we wanted to get into it or not, eventually it would have happened, regardless of Pearl Harbor. It would have happened. So it's like, looking at it from that lens, it's like, yes, we have to support rearmament. We got to fight the Nazis. But nobody really knew that back then, as far as I know. Maybe some of these people who were calling for rearmament, maybe they knew, maybe there were rumors, I don't know, of what was going on, what Hitler was all about. I don't know. And maybe that's why I need to look up some documentaries about this time, and not, there's all kinds of documentaries just about the war, but I'd really love to learn just America at this point in time. What were the reasons for people wanted to get into it? What were the reasons people didn't want to get into it? And because it's almost like, I don't know. It's almost, I don't know. It's like you look at it nowadays from the hindsight days, it's almost looks as if the people who didn't want to get into the war were the bad guys. And the people that did want to get into the war are the good guys. But at the same time, it's like, but getting into war is not a good thing. And
yeah,
that's why that's why I'd be interested to know what America knew. Because if you've ever watched have you seen Band of Brothers on HBO?
yes. Mm-hmm.
There's a moment, that episode of Band of Brothers where it says why we go to war. I think is the episode title. And that's when they discover that concentration camp.
Right.
Which leads me to believe, if they are trying to portray the history accurately, it wasn't until that moment in the war that the American military, thus the American people, didn't truly understand what the Nazis were doing in regard to the quote Jewish solution, right?
Right.
So
right.
It makes me wonder what kind of rumors were circulating before America got, yeah, I need to kind of try to seek that out, because I think it would be interesting to know.
At some point, I think it just really boils down to that quote that you hear people speak of. And I looked it up. It's attributed to Edmund Burke, who I don't know who that is. But the quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing."
Yep.
So ultimately, the question comes down to, I think, that, and particularly, what was going on with the Chinese and the Japanese had been going on since before World War I, actually, which was only about 20 years ago. But the advancement of fascist Germany and Hitler, that was a brand new thing that had only been going on for about 3 or 4 years. And any reports, I would imagine, that were coming from people who had been witnessing that could not have been good as far as what Hitler was doing or how it looked or anything like that. So regardless of anything else, at some point, like you said, the U.S. would have had to have gotten involved. We would have had too many friends that were involved, and maybe they would have asked us for help. Maybe not. I mean, it just depends. But at some point, a president would have had to have told our country that, hey, look, enough of our friends are involved in this. We have to help them, because if they're not there, if nothing is done, this is probably the ultimate outcome, unless somebody steps up, so and even then, I mean, you would have people that would disagree, but given that context, I don't understand how consciously you could have disagreed with that motivation by itself. Now, of course, we know that politics are much, much more complex than anything like that. But if that is the lens through which it is shown to us, how can you not agree that yes, we need to help?
Yeah.
That's
why I need to seek out information about that time frame, because think about today. Think about like what's going on in Ukraine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It almost echoes it to a certain extent. You've got this guy who controls this country in a fascist type of way, and he invades this other country that they used to be part of the Soviet Union, and now they're trying to get it back. And you got a lot of people, you got a faction of the United States. It's like, we have to help. We got to help them. They can't let this guy just invade and subjugate all these people. That's what America does. We fight the bad guys. And then you've got the other faction. It's like, no, that's not it's none of our business. We're not in this. And so it's almost kind of the same thing. And when it comes to learning truly what's happening over there, we don't get all the right information, even in this day and age with the technology and the 24-hour news cycle and the the way that news can literally travel from one side of the country or one side of the world to the other immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, they of course they had radio and junk, but still, I have to imagine that a lot of what they were hearing, kind of like today, they don't truly knew that none of them probably truly knew what was going on over there. However, I do know that there would be, people in the United States that still had relatives living
Right.
in Germany,
Yeah.
for example. And so they would get letters and they would know, oh my God, this is what's happened. The family down the street were taken away last night, stuff like that.
Right.
So people, I think, and I think those are the people that were probably, we need to get into this war. This is what's happening over there. And then politically, you don't know. I think, God, who was it Eisenhower at this point? Not Eisenhower.
No,
Jefferson?
Roosevelt.
Yeah. I know that I listen to a lot of history podcasts, and I listened to the one about every presidential election leading up to this one. So I was listening, I listened to episodes about him during this time, and I felt like he wanted to get into the war maybe, but he knew that it wasn't a popular thing. And so he couldn't really do anything about it. And it's probably why I feel like there was a conspiracy theory that went out around at some point that we were behind what happened in Pearl Harbor just to give Americans reason to get into the war.
Right.
So it's good to know that kind of crazy shit has never changed in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to seek out more information like that. The problem is that when I listen to podcasts like that, I don't tend to retain the information for very long because I'm, there's so much
Right.
you're getting so much input every single day. I don't have one of those brains that retains a lot of that junk, but yeah. There was a couple things I wanted to point out in this story.
Okay.
First off, we meet this guy on page 1 when Lois shows up to the peace rally. There's a guy there. They talk about it in the narration box. As Lois enters Gladstone Hall, Ted Allen confronts her. Have we met Ted Allen before? They make it sound like we should know who this guy is.
Well, Ted Allen is an out gay man, and he was part of that television show. I forget. It was a collection of like 4 or 5 gay men that would take on quote unquote clients and change to make them successful.
Are you talking about that show on Bravo?
Yes. Yeah. He is the host on Chopped now on the cooking channel, but that's where he first came into prominence, was one of that group of guys that would change people's, they
Queer eye for this great guy.
Yes, they redid their outfits, their wardrobe, they redid their living arrangement, they redid Ted Allen, he was
I don't think this is the same guy. I don't think that's him. The
Oh,
reason
okay.
I ask is because a little later in the story, so we're immediately after this, we're introduced to the main bad guy, as it were, Stuart Pemberton. He's the guy that gets up and he says a speech. There's somebody with Lois in the audience that tries to get Lois to stay where she's at. I'm assuming that's Ted Allen still, but they don't. He doesn't. I mean, I don't know. His hair is a little different, but he shows up again later. There's a moment. Let's see, page 5, page 6. After Superman overhears the plot and he starts following these guys when they leave, a car races away. Superman chases after it and he says, "There goes Alan." And then later, Alan's car halts near the Bell Bridge and the guy gets out and he's got a machine gun. But I don't know. It's like they introduce him as if we already know who he is. They don't really set him up so that we know until this moment that he's part of the whole I don't know. It just felt really the inclusion of this guy felt really weird.
A quick Google says that issue 36 is the first time that we run into Ted
Hmm.
Allen, but now he could be a minor enough character that Google doesn't really pick him up too
Yeah.
readily. So, I mean, that is possible. But the DC Fandom Wiki 36, issue 36, is the first time that it has Ted Allen recorded. So
He's just one of those characters that they just didn't have enough room to fully introduce him in a realistic fashion, I guess.
well, but
Just
then
kind of throw him
why
in.
even drop his name? I mean, is
Right.
his name
Yeah.
no? Um, I want to point out that 3 panels before that, is this the first time we have seen Lois actually driving?
I don't know.
So that
I
was
don't
that struck me as something different, because usually we've seen a plane, we've seen a train, we've seen a bus, we've seen her being driven, chauffeured, as it were.
yeah.
But I don't remember too many times that she has actually gotten in a car and driven somewhere.
I don't know. There's certain things like that that kind of pop out where we're like, I think it's in the next story, because I don't think we see the chief of the planet in this issue at all.
Mm-mm.
But there's a moment, I think, in the next story, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but we see the chief, and I realize that we're seeing him from behind, that we don't see his face. And then I started to think, have we ever seen his face at this point? Is he one of those characters that, because I remember one of the stories we talked about previously, Clark bursts into his office and says, "Hey, I got this idea for a story." And the chief's like, "Get on it." But the whole time the chief's got a newspaper in front of him, so you can't see his face.
Well, I think we have seen
Part of it.
partial
Yeah.
sometimes, a side view.
I don't know. I just got to thinking about that. But
Okay.
yeah, I don't know about Lois driving. That's and neither of us want to go back and start combing through all these issues.
No, if I think if it were that big an issue, I probably
Yeah.
would remember. But it did
Yeah.
kind of tickle the brain. It's like, at the very least, this is unusual because we haven't seen it very many times. Unlike, let's say, Superman jumping. Ha ha ha. So
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second because
okay.
I think we're gonna talk a lot about him flying in this episode and especially in the next episode. We'll tease the next episode real quick because the next episode we're talking about the first story in Superman number 10. And that is the story that, according to the internet, in regard to the DC comics, that's the story that Superman first flies. And there's one panel in the next story that shows Superman in the air. It's supposed to, people say it looks like he's hovering because his
Yes.
cape is not moving. There's no motion lines. So obviously, if he's hovering in midair, that means he can fly. And so that's
Okay.
why they point to that issue. However, all of the cases that we have talked about up to this point where it is super obvious he's flying, I don't understand why it takes one solitary panel for the whole world to go, "Oh, there it is. He's flying." Because something we'll also talk about in more detail in the next episode is that they don't actually mention that Superman can fly, even though from Superman 10 onward, when we see him in the air, he is flying. They don't actually mention it until let's see, I wrote this down. Superman number 30.
Oh, wow.
The story
That is.
entitled The Mysterious Mr. Mixie's Pitlick. It's the first appearance of Mixie's
Oh,
Pitlick.
hey.
And there's a moment in there where Superman says, I thought I was the only one who could fly.
That's
That's the first
years
time he
from now,
mentions,
man.
yeah. So,
Goodness.
but to look at this issue, let's look at the scene where the bombs are being dropped on
Okay.
Metropolis.
Yes.
So not only, actually, we'll look at page 11, the page after the bombs start dropping. Superman's up in the sky. He's taking airplanes down. And not only is it fairly obvious just by looking at the panels that he's up there flying, there's a bit of narration that states, but as he expertly dodges in and out among their raining bullets, they succeed only in sending their comrades down in flames. So not only is he up there punching planes, he is able in midair to dodge bullets enough
up and down,
that the planes are shooting each other down.
Right. Leaping up and falling is not enough to be able to do that.
No.
You can suspend physics in comic books only so much, and then it's like, but even the comic books have to have their own physics, and those physics don't make sense in the comic book. So
right. And so I wanted to point that out because I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about what's going to happen in issue 10 of Superman, because we're going to talk all about that in the next episode. But I wanted to point this out mainly as an example of something to think about when we're in the next episode and we're talking about Superman number 10, and we start talking about that one panel that made everybody go, oh, okay, now it's super obvious that he's flying, because there is more in that issue that is way more obvious that he's flying than that one single solitary panel. And I can only assume that, I guess, everything else up to that point, when we're looking at it and we're going, oh, come on, he's flying here, I guess I can only assume that there's maybe they're like, well, yeah, but with these panels, you could almost come up with why he's not flying. But that one panel, his cape's not moving. There are no motion lines, which means he's just floating in midair. And I'm like, if he's up in the sky, whether he's floating or not, his cape's going to move, because the higher up you get, the windier it gets. Right. I don't know. But yeah, so this is something to keep in mind.
It was kind of not cool that he took that locomotive engine and turned it 90 degrees and put it back down on that track on the bridge, because those men, when they got out of the locomotive, how in the hell are they going to get to the track?
Right. And it's funny too, because so let's okay. So just to kind of beef up what's happening in this story before we get to this point, we got these guys, Pemberton, at a peace rally, down with disarmament. They don't want, or down with rearmament. They don't want the country rearming because they want to come in as Nation X and take the country over. And if the country, if the military is not fully armed, then they have an easier chance of doing it. So Superman, of course, gets mixed up in it, and he's trying to stop them. And this guy, Ted Allen, sets out with a bunch of other bad guys to go blow up a bridge. And while Superman doesn't manage to stop them, they are able to blow up the bomb. It doesn't destroy the bridge, but it does weaken the bridge's foundations. And so a train is coming across the bridge, and Superman realizes that if the train gets in the middle of that bridge, the foundations are weak enough that the bridge will collapse. Everybody on the train will die. So he does what we love seeing Superman do. He jumps down in front of the train and he physically stops it from moving forward. I know that we've seen him deal with the train at least one other time, but did he stop the train like this the last time?
I think he stood in front of it and made the train stop. Okay. I don't think he physically did.
Okay. So this is a first, I guess.
I think so, yeah.
Stopping the train isn't enough. He knows that once he leaves, the train's going to go, all right, well, I guess let's keep going. So he literally picks the engine up and sets it across the tracks. That's not perpendicular. What do you call that? That's
no, that is perpendicular.
Is that perpendicular?
Would be the same way.
Okay, that's right. Parallels the same. Okay. So perpendicular across the tracks and then jumps away. But the funny thing about that, I love that they included the last panel on this page, to make us as readers feel better about what happened. Because the engineer and the other train guy is like, oh, did you see that? And the other guy says, I did. And look at the bridge's foundations. We owe our lives to him. So they're okay with the train just, I mean, I don't know what they're going to use to get that train
I,
back on the track.
in 1941, I have no idea how you fix
Hopefully,
that.
hopefully Superman will come back after the bridge is fixed and get the train back on the tracks.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
that's
know,
what I
but
assume.
that's yeah.
He's probably got a little book, a little
Right.
notebook in his tights, and he writes down, okay, go back and fix the
Yeah,
train.
right
You know,
train. Okay.
once I save everybody from the Nation X, go back and write the train. But
That's what he
yeah,
does on his off days, is he
yeah,
goes around
that's right.
undoing all the stuff he did. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like, wow.
yeah, that's funny. Um, I also enjoyed. Okay, so after this, the blowing up of the bridge isn't their only plan. They're also going to drop these bottles of narcotics into the reservoir or the water
Yeah.
supply,
Yeah, they're going to poison the water.
and Superman has to come up with a plan really fast to stop them from doing that. And so his plan is to tell them that they have been double crossed, that the bottles that they have do not contain deadly narcotics. It's just harmless water. And he'll prove it to him by drinking one of the bottles.
Right.
And of course, Superman being Superman, it doesn't affect him. So these dumbasses are like, oh, well, I guess it is water. And one of them takes a big drink out of it. And of course, it says he topples into unconsciousness. But the dude's dead. Come on. If they have like at max 3 bottles of water of poison here that they were going to dump into the water supply, that's some highly concentrated shit in one bottle.
Right. Yeah.
So this guy's dead. He's not just slumped into unconsciousness. He's dead. And as he's dropping, he goes, "We've been tricked."
He drops the water, the bottle probably into the water supply.
Right?
Yeah. It's but Superman is leaping away, so it must
Yeah.
be okay. Yeah. Okay.
He's like, all right, that's all right. That's when we get the planes. I mean, this is a coordinated attack that they got going on. Blow up the bridge, which I assume would stop the army from bringing in tanks and supplies and junks like that. Because this would have been before the interstate highway system. That's exactly why the interstate highway system was built, to get military vehicles and supplies like that from one side of the country to the other as quickly as possible.
It was not built for our travel. That
no,
was
not at
the
all.
Intent.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the blowing up of the bridge, the poisoning of the water supply, and then the bombing of Metropolis. And there's at least 4 or 5 planes in the air. They're dropping bombs. We have this radio announcer saying, "News flash, the city has been attacked by mysterious bombers. Destruction widespread." So yeah, a lot of dead people, a lot of injured people. We just don't see any of it, which, again, they've only got 13 pages to tell this story, but would have liked to have just seen some of the destruction. But yeah, that's when Superman leaps into the air and destroys the airplanes. He doesn't kill one of the pilots who takes a shot at Superman. The bullet bounces off of Superman and ricochets back and kills him.
Right.
Which is at least the second time we've seen that happen.
Right.
And then we get Pemberton. The next plan of the next phase of their attack is they break into the radio station WMET. MET, I'm assuming, is short for Metropolis. And Pemberton gets on the radio to tell everybody that they need to surrender. And the thing that I find the funniest about this is he refers to their nation, their conquering nation, as the conquering nation. He doesn't give a name to whatever conquering nation this is. And it's like, okay, DC, come on, just say it. Even if you have to make up a name. But for him to say, even now, the planes of the conquering nation zoom overhead. Why can't you say blah, 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 Stan or something?
Right.
I found that really weird.
The way he says it, it seems like he's not a part of it too.
Yeah.
Now the planes of the it's like, well, aren't those your planes? I mean, he doesn't take ownership of being part of the same group, it seems.
Right.
He's like a third party narrator or something like that. Yeah.
Kind of his way to try to avoid any legal ramifications if it goes south.
I
But
guess, yeah.
but he's also using the opportunity to say, look, he's basically like, look, this nation is bombing us. We should probably surrender before it gets any worse. Let's, I think, as citizens of Metropolis, we need to surrender. That's when Lois tries to come into the radio station, and she is snatched up by one of the thugs. Superman, who's still leaping in the air, can hear what's going on in the radio station, jumps down and rescues Lois. I was really confused at first here because the guy uses Lois as a human shield, puts the gun to her head, and he's backing into an elevator. And Superman says, "Sorry, I can't sacrifice your life," but then turns around and starts beating up a bunch of other guys. And that I found that really confusing at first until I realized, oh, so they're in an elevator right now. They're going down.
Right. Yeah. So I guess
Superman decided to stay up there and mop up before he jumped
now,
down to the ground to save her.
on this page, this to me signifies that he's flying.
Yes. Yes. Right. Yes.
I mean, there is no way that you. First of all, let me just say the way that it's drawn, where he goes out the window, kind of made me laugh because it looks like he just jumped. It just,
right.
you know, I don't know how he's going to manage to land on his feet to jump again, jumping like this, you know, but like this, and then he zooms down. And in a nice big arc, goes back into the doors at the bottom of the building to wait for that elevator. So I mean, yeah,
that's
flying. He's flying.
That's some freaking amazing falling right there.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
I often see people fall from tall and arc
every
go
time
into a doorway when they get to the bottom. Yeah, that again, we'll really hit on it in the next episode. But I don't understand why the one panel in the next issue is the nail in the coffin when we've got stuff like this. But they wrap this story up super quick. Superman hangs out by the elevator. As soon as it opens up, he just pops the guy in the chin. And I guess that's Pemberton at this point. Mm-hmm. And with Pemberton down, it's all done. It's all over.
Right.
Nothing bad's going to happen again. And so Superman leaps away. Lois tells him, wait. And he says, why? I'm needed no longer. And then we get our final panel, which has become a staple now of these issues, of these stories. And it's one of my favorites because we've had those final panels. I know we had one just within the last couple of episodes where Lois is like, hey, I didn't even see you around. How did you get that story? And Clark's like, I got it from Superman. But this one is literally, he lets her type up her own version of the story and gets ready to submit it. And then tells her, the way he says it, I want to slap him because she says, like the article I've dashed off, you should turn green with envy. And his response is, strangely enough, at this moment, the presses are running off an article of mine and it covers the same yarn. He might as well have just been flipping her the bird. You know, it's like,
there it is. I let you go to all that work, and then by the way, mine is being printed.
Yeah,
just so you know.
Not only did I also write the story, I got it in before you, and they're already printing it up. So even if they went with your story, it's too late to get on the presses anyway. Yeah. But thankfully, mine's being printed. It's like, what an asshole.
Seems to be the thing now is that Clark is never there, but yet his article always beats Lois's article, who typically is there.
Right.
To print. So,
And yet he, every once in a while, likes to bring up the fact that he's got to act a certain way so she doesn't realize that he's Superman. Mm-hmm. And we know that he acts like a coward. He does that on purpose. But also, based on this last panel, he's also a real asshole to her sometimes, too.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah.
And he's even kind of waving at her. It's like he's walking away. He's being super dismissive of what, hey, look, check out the article I wrote. It's great. Yeah, mine's already been printed. See ya.
Yeah.
So, it was, like you said, it felt different in tone, but good Lord, it's like the second um uh conquering nation type of story, because
Hmm.
we had one of those just a couple episodes back with the um remember with the ship and the submarine and the
Right. The signaling from the ship and
yeah,
yeah.
because that guy was also pretending to be, you know, uh calling for peace and all this, and rearmament's a bad thing and using it to try to take over the country. So it's weird that we have two of them, the same basic, it's not the same story. A lot of different stuff happens, but the same theme, very similar themes like that. And
I guess it's because it's what's in the zeitgeist at
yeah,
the moment.
yep, it's
So
what's on people's minds.
yeah.
And there were, you hear the term homegrown Nazis all the time. There were these groups in America at the time. I mean, hell, they had the Nazi party were
Right.
marching the streets of New York and junk. And so, yeah,
Nazis, socialists, fascists,
yep,
they're all uh, types of thought that people had even at that point. So, I mean, any one of those could have wound up just like Nazis,
yeah,
socialists, fascists. So, I mean,
yep,
it's like all of them were pretty much anti what we had, democracy or a republic or, however, bureaucracy, however you want to describe it. It was not fascist or socialist. So they wanted their point of view. And
yep,
then, of course, the extreme end of that is Nazism. So, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it was here at the time.
yeah, yeah. That's why I want to. I think I say this almost every time. I want to get more versed in what was going on at the time than I, maybe be able to speak on it during these episodes. And yet I've done nothing more than just talk about that. That's
Well,
what I want to do.
your dance card is pretty full.
It is. And even with stuff I listen to, I mean, you should see my freaking podcast queue. It's full.
Yep.
And there's new shit being added every week. And there's like what, a million new podcasts that start up every single day.
Seems like it, yeah.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
everybody is getting involved.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say about this issue?
No, sir.
Do you have any? Are there any moments that stand out to you as the funniest moment? Your
Uh,
favorite moment?
Probably my favorite moment is that one that I pointed out about the train engine being laid on the track 90 degree because I mean, and he just left it, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
yes, okay, it does do what you said it would do. Nobody is getting through either way now. That's absolutely right. My first thought was, well, what about the dudes in the engine? How do they leave? But then after that, my thought was, how in the world, as a regular person, do you fix that? What
yeah.
what? Yeah, so I thought,
See,
well, that's a sign. Here is the sign that Superman was here. This, like we have etchings of ancient aliens and all this stuff on the rocks and whatever. Here's the proof and it's like, no, no, no. This is proof Superman was here because
yep.
this cannot be done. So,
See, I'm gonna pitch this to DC Comics right now, and I'm gonna offer Chris Somney. I think he should draw it
mm,
because I think he would be a perfect Superman artist. But they should do a series set in the Golden Age that is a lot of him coming back to fix these issues after the
mhm,
fact. Something that's not action
absolutely.
packed. It's more of personal stories about Superman, but also within that are him. The shit that we don't see, like him coming back to fix the train.
Well,
But
just kind of like that funny book that Marvel has put out about that group that goes around cleaning up after superhero battles.
yeah,
You could have some group of normal people that go and it's their job to undo the
yep,
stuff that Superman has
yep,
done. The cave-ins of the valley and the moving of
yeah,
buildings and all. It's like, yeah, let's
yep,
see what regular everyday people would do to fix this stuff that Superman
yeah.
has helped us with. Yeah.
But look at that panel though of the train crosswise on the tracks. Look at the
Hmm.
length of the engine
Yes.
compared to the width of the tracks. It's to me, it looks like it's balanced very precariously.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for those guys in the pilot room, or whatever you want to call that part of the engine where they drive the train, there are walkways that go all the way around that engine and railings that they can get out on and walk around the train from the outside. And so they can do that. But once they leave the back of that train and start moving to the middle,
Sure.
does that throw off the balance?
Yeah.
Is the train going to pitch into the freaking river? But obviously not, unless those guys are just talking from within the train. But
maybe they had already gotten out. Maybe he gave them a chance to get out and then set the train like that.
Well, I don't know, the panel where he's lifting up the train, which apparently has no wheels. There's a guy
right
in
the wheels.
Yeah. There's a guy in the cabin. He's going, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" But yeah, fun issue. Probably was a very deeply political, serious issue at the time.
I would say,
probably had a lot of people talking. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yep, me too.
Cool. Want to wrap her all up then?
Yes, sir.
All right, folks. That was Action Comics number 36. Did you guys read it? Let us know. What is the email address? The Superman Super Show at gmail.com. It's in the show notes. Don't worry about writing that down. It's in the show notes. But let us know. We haven't gotten any feedback since we've come back. And, we used to do these feedback episodes every now and again and would like to do another one at some point. So send us some feedback. I promise I won't lose it like I did on Hither Came Conan. Well, I can't promise that, but I'll do my best. But yeah, until next week, folks, I'm Steven and that's Ed. And this was the Superman Super Show. Bye.
Ciao.
Oh my goodness, I am yawning.
This is 76.
76. The bicentennial. Or centennial. I guess it depends on which year. Or which century. Right?
Right.
Oh, this next one's a big one, folks. Those of you who may be watching live or watching the video before the episode comes out.
Do you have anybody with us?
No, I don't know. It still says 0.
Haven't seen any comments or anything.
Yeah. But this is a big one. Superman apparently flies for the first time and we get the return. It's funny, as I was reading this today, all I could think about is the last time we recorded and how we ended up that last episode talking about how let's just get to the point where we get some proper super villains and blah, blah, blah. And here it is,
It is. Just a couple stories later.
Yeah. And it probably, we probably won't see it again for another year, but still.
Right.
It was just enough to feed that appetite.
Yep.
All right. I am recording.
As am I. Well, I think I am. Let me take another look. La, 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 la. Yes, I am recording.
Yawn again. Neither my coffee nor my energy drink seems to be.
Oh.
It's not energizing me. That's right. That's right. Ready whenever you are.
I'm ready to go already.
Do it.
You're listening to the Superman Super Show episode 77, The Invisible Luthor.
Bum, bum, bum.
Hello and welcome to the Superman Super Show. I'm a host. My name is Ed, and 1,000 miles over there to my left is another host, Mr. Steven Orrs. Steven, how are you, sir?
Good. Doing good. I have nothing for banter.
I do.
All right.
So, lately, and it can include comic books or not, what other than Superman have you been reading?
For even though this episode will be released in February, as the time we're recording it, the new GI Joe issue #1 was
Okay.
released by Skybound. I have been all into the Energon universe, as they call it, the Void Rival, the Transformers,
Mhm.
the miniseries that they put out, Destro, Scarlet, Cobra Commander, Duke, and
Mhm.
now the new issue of GI Joe. Um, those have been a lot of fun. You know, they have GI Joe, a real American hero, that Larry Hama is writing, that basically is a continuation of the story that started way back with the Marvel series back in the 80s. I think that's pretty amazing that he's still writing it. It's
Mhm.
gone from Marvel to Dynamite to Devil's Due to IDW. Well, maybe Dynamite didn't have it. IDW and now to Image. And he's still, that he's still crafting that freaking tale in that universe and just doing his thing. And so I've been reading those as well. Those are fun. But this new reimagining of GI Joe and tying it into the Transformers and it's really really good. I would have liked to have seen Roadblock on the initial team because he's my favorite, but Rock and Roll is a member of the original team, and I really like him too. Anybody that's jacked and carries a great big machine gun, for some
Okay.
reason, I'm in their corner every time, as long as
Okay.
they're not doing evil shit. But those are usually my favorite guys on the team. But yeah, those have been a lot of fun. Uh, yeah, I think other than that, Oni, I think it was, released and is releasing a new Sectars
Mhm.
series. That first issue was all right. I've tried the new TMNT that Jason Aaron is writing, and I really enjoyed the first issue. And I've tried to start the second issue a number of times, and just haven't been all that into it for some reason. But I bought the first 3 issues, so I should read all 3 of them.
Okay.
But yeah.
Did you see the announcement that the Herculoids are getting a book?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think Thundar is getting a book too.
How about Speed Racer? That came out
Oh.
this week. The announcement.
Speed Racer was not, I wasn't really into Speed Racer as a kid.
Oh,
I don't know why. I would see it every now and again.
goodness.
Um, I don't know. I think I'll check it out. It's kind of like Johnny Quest. Johnny Quest was one of
Mhm.
those cartoons that I would watch if it was on when I was a kid, but it wasn't something I would go to, I wasn't making sure I was in front of the TV every day whenever it was on a Saturday morning or whatever. And they just did. They've got a comic book coming out,
Right.
or
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
has been coming out.
Currently, yeah,
But
it's 3 or
yeah,
4 issues in already.
I've I've heard really good things about it, but I'm
How
not
about
reading it.
Battle of the Planets? Gotcha, man.
Yes, I've got
Okay.
the first couple of issues of that. I'm really
Okay.
enjoying it. That was a cartoon I totally dug
Yes,
when I was a
absolutely.
kid.
Yep.
It was like Voltron without the
Mhm.
giant robot before Voltron
Yep.
was a thing. And Thundercats. I've been reading Thundercats too.
Yes,
That's been
yeah.
pretty good.
What is up with this massive nostalgia wave that they're riding of cartoon characters here lately?
Well, it's funny because there was a time, sometime in the early to mid 70s, like at Marvel Comics, when Marvel and DC, they get this new batch of writers, and it was the first time guys and girls who grew up reading comic books started writing comic books.
Hmm.
And so and drawing. And so it's almost why there was kind of a shift in the way some of those, stories became better and more nuanced and blah 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 blah. And now it's like, I don't know, I guess folks that are our age that grew up watching these cartoons are now like, I want to make a freaking comic book out of that. It's like, I get it, because if I was in their position, I'd be like, damn it, I want to see a new Thundar cartoon. I want to see it now, but I have no control over that. But you know what? I could make a Thundar comic
Exactly. I
book,
do
you
have
know?
control over a comic
Yeah.
book. Yeah.
I could tell
Yeah.
the kind of stories I'd want to see on the cartoon. So let's
Yeah,
do
to
that.
me it's just interesting because I think for the most part it denotes a certain age of creator,
Yeah.
that they are looking at these properties favorably, because a lot of these properties, I don't know that recently you could say that they're on unless you went and looked for them. They're not
Right.
big broadcast, big production kind of
Well, and
properties.
they're all Space Ghost is one as well.
Yes.
They are all properties that, you know, if I base it on my age and my generation, all of them were big in some form or another during the 80s.
Yes,
Uh
or a
Saturday
little
morning.
bit before, depending on the property. But
Yeah, well,
yeah,
even because like Johnny Quest, the Herculoids, Space Ghost, those all originated in the 60s and they were big in the 60s. But they continued in rerun throughout the 70s and the 80s.
right.
And there was a cartoon, a Saturday morning cartoon in the 80s called Space Stars that had Space Ghost and the Herculoids on it. They were new stories,
Okay.
but yeah, I just have to assume that a lot of these guys and girls that are writing these are probably in their late 40s to mid to late 50s at this
Yeah.
point and grew up watching that stuff on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun to see, for the past, I don't know, probably 6 months or so. Every couple weeks, it seems like there's a new nostalgia cartoon that's going to get a mini series from somebody. So it's been fun.
You know, one that I really should mention because I was gonna say I don't I don't really buy a lot of comics. I just don't because I can't afford it. So it's like anything that I'm putting my money down to read, it's all stuff like that. G.I. Joe, Transformers,
Mhm.
Gatchaman, Space Ghost. But the moon is following us. Have you heard of this book from Image Comics? It's a Daniel.
I think
It's
so.
it's basically the new Daniel Warren Johnson book.
Okay.
But part of the story takes place in the real world. Part of the story takes place in like a dream world. And so Daniel Warren Johnson writes it, and any bits of the story that take place in the real world, he provides the art. When they go into the dream world, Riley Rosmo does the art.
Okay.
And there's only 2 issues out so far, and it's really good. And it's one of these, I had no idea it was coming up. I just happened to go to Comixology the week that it was cut, that it came, first issue came out. I'm just looking through covers and I went, oh, what's this? It looks interesting. And I'm Riley Rosmo. And then I see Daniel Warren Johnson. I'm like, oh, I'll give this a try. And yeah, it was a big surprise. It was really good. Have you tried any of the Absolute books from DC? Absolute Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman?
Not yet. I have Wonder Woman to read, but I haven't taken the opportunity to read it yet.
I read the first Batman issue through the DC app and was pleasantly surprised. It is so different. It is, it's that they really did a complete reboot with
Okay.
this, and uh who the character of Alfred is and who Batman is and I don't want to spoil anything, but it was really good. And Batman, he's a big freaking dude. He's a big guy. And he's got, if you've seen the artwork, the bat on his chest looks really dumb. It's like almost a rectangle with just these little tips to represent the wings and the little uh ears, the bat ears, but otherwise it's just a big rectangle. Well, turns out there's a reason for that. So it's
Okay.
it's
Cool.
really good. I'm looking forward to Superman and Wonder Woman. I haven't seen them pop up yet on the app, but yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, a lot of. I won't go so far like a lot of people do and say that we're in a golden age of comic books. We do have a dearth available. There are plenty of books to choose from. However you get crowdfunding, indie,
Yeah.
major companies, big two, whatever. Probably more so than there maybe have ever been, even in the 80s. But I hesitate saying a golden age because I don't know how you measure how these stories hold up.
Yeah.
Um, well, I just I won't say a golden age. My golden age is 1980s Marvel to
Yep.
be exact.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
for me. And I'll admit that a lot of that is age related. I can't necessarily say that the stories that they put out then were better or worse or what, I mean, there's good and bad all the time. But I don't know. There's a lot of stuff available right now, and it's fun to actually have to. For me, it's fun to have to pick because it's not a well, there's so few. I can just go through and get everything because there's not
Yeah.
that much. Now it's like no, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I only have X that I can spend, and I have 10 times X that I could get. So,
Yeah. Even if you take Marvel and DC out of the equation, there's still a crap ton of good stuff out there.
yeah,
It's
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
What was I going to say? Oh, you saying that about it, you don't want to call it a golden age. Just, I had sent you an IM through Twixter. I think that's what I'm going to call it from now on, Twixter.
Okay.
Sitting in the drive-thru at McDonald's saying, I'm going to be a little late because McDonald's is taking forever. When I went to the app, I had a notification, and it's every once in a while I get notifications that somebody that I follow posted something that has nothing to do with me, and I need to turn that off. But it was a post by Rob Liefeld, and it just says, this absolutely not true, not even close. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And he's quoting somebody else saying, comics are better than they ever have been.
Yeah, and in a way, of course, I would have to agree with Rob,
Right. I think,
but you have to find out what that person means before you can truly say that
exactly.
you disagree.
Yeah.
Now, right now, no, we don't have a Kirby, we don't have a Stan Lee, a Chris Claremont, a John Byrne. We don't have those kind of people, and we probably moving forward never will, because of the time
Yeah.
that they were there, not necessarily because of their craft or their ability. But for people now who are just getting into reading comic books, there may be those creators that will make the same impression on them that John Byrne and Chris Claremont made on me at that same age. Just happens to be 50 years ago. That, that's all. So depending on what you say. Now, if if you're going to sit there, well, yeah, you have to define it a little bit more before really you can get into any decent conversation about that. On the surface, yeah, I would have to say I don't see how you can call this a golden age as far as my definition of golden age. So, yeah.
Well, and yeah, because Liefeld's of our generation.
Yes.
And, I saw that. My first thought was, well, but you don't know what he means, Rob.
Exactly.
This guy could be 18 years old, and he's only been reading comics for 5 years, and he hasn't read, this is the stuff he's growing up with, or she, I don't know who it is. But at the same time, it's like, I would almost say, all right, if you're saying Marvel and DC, those books, it's never been as good, I would emphatically go, oh, hell no.
Exactly. That's right.
Now, if we're talking about indie, and I include Image, Dark Horse, that stuff is amazing, but it has been for a good 20, 25 years, if even more. But still, you think about what we had available to us, which was mainly Marvel and DC. Every once in a while, you'd get an Elf Quest, you'd get a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you'd get an Akira. Don't get started about that amazing book. But yeah, I if my son came up to me tomorrow and said, "Man, comics have never been this good," I may want to slap him down, but I would understand where he's coming from.
And the problem is that you you can't introduce people now to what we read that made that same impression for us, because they won't be, everything is different, and so it won't be received
Yeah.
by someone 13 now that it was for us when we were 13 then.
Yep.
So you know, and that's why it always, I see this a lot in sports, and Rob has talked about this too. People saying such and such is the greatest ever at their sport. And it's like, you know, in my mind, I automatically think, well, what about this person? And what about that? And when I go back and look at it, the people that I think of are almost always of set generations.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, the, if you consider the frame of reference, then okay. But if you say the frame of reference is all, it's like, well, no, that's not even possible, because, you know, this person, they changed the game, and yeah, so it's, but everybody's perspective is so different that, yeah, right now, you know, so and so is the best, and it's like, well, right now, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as the fan, you get into these arguments about, well, what about the 65 these guys, and the 70 those guys, and the 83 these guys? And it's like, well, you can't, because everything is different. So yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, if you had somebody come up to you today and was like, "Hey, I've been reading comics now for 2 years. I read a lot of Batman comics. And, you know, that's all I've read are Batman comics just released in the last 2 years. Can you know, what other Batman comics should I read?" I would immediately Batman The Dark Knight Returns. But because if you read this, you're going to go, "Okay, it's like what I'm reading now."
Exactly.
I would go, but here's a comic book. Here's a Batman comic from the 70s, which is really corny. Read that first. That was what Batman was like up until Dark Knight Returns. So read that, and then imagine this is Batman, and then read Dark. And then, because, yeah, nobody's going to read Dark Knight Returns for the first time today and go, "Holy, this is what Batman can be," you know?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So, but what? Okay. So, what are? Because I don't know that you really talked about what you're reading.
Well, actually, I have been trying to read comic related, but less comic books and more other things.
Like,
and well, right now my big push is I am reading a lot of contemporary comic book fanzines. Now, once upon a time, for those of you that have looked into it or are old enough, the fanzines were where you got the news, other than in the letters pages. And for those of you that don't know what that is, look that up. Letters pages in comic books. But there weren't magazines, there weren't TV shows, podcasts. There were no other methods other than the fanzines. And what a fanzine basically is it's a very amateur publication. Usually it's driven by one person or a couple people that are really big fans of a property. And they go to virtually all of the expense of producing on very cheap, we'll just say very low money output, written publications. They would go so far as to touch base with creators and interview them and put them in there. Some of the people associated with the fanzine were artists, and they would do art, and that would be included. Any information about current storylines or upcoming storylines or whatever that the people had been able to find out would be in the fanzine. But everything about either that fanzine or that issue would be about a few things, whether it's all of the books by a certain company, which at the time in the 60s and 70s was just one or two companies basically, or a property. Avengers or Batman or X-Men, Legion of Superheroes had a very famous fanzine. So Nowadays, it's a little different because of our media access. So typically, what fanzines focus on are indie artists and the indie scene and the quote unquote zine scene. Now, for those of you that don't know what a zine is, whenever you've gone to a comic book convention, the zines are typically the really, really toned down, basic looking, small little publications where somebody has taken like a 8.5 by 11 and they folded it up into 8 pieces. And that's a zine. And they'll tell a little story in 10 or 12 pages. And they usually sell them, in my mind, for too much. The little book will be like $10 or something like that, you know. But the fanzines that I'm interested in talk about comics as a whole. And typically that's looking at the entire indie scene. 2 of them really are prominent to me. And once you find your way into this circle, these are the 2 probably that are talked about the most, that people interact with the most. One is called Comic Blogger, and it's like 10 or 11 issues, and it's a smaller publication. It's not a full-size 8.5 by 11. And it comes out of somewhere in the Midwest. I forget where it's published. But the other one is called Bubbles. It just reached 20 issues. They come out a half to a quarter. So every 6 months, every 4 to 6 months, a new issues come out. He just popped out his 20th issue last month. It comes out of Richmond, Virginia. And actually there is a convention around it. The dude used to work and own at a very popular comic book store. So there's a Richmond Bubbles scene because of that. And he talks to a lot of the bigger name people as far as the indie small press, because he's been around a while. He just has been putting out the zine for about 5 years, but he has been in the scene for about 20. So he has a lot of contacts, and I really enjoy that zine, comics fanzine in particular, because he goes to conventions in Canada. He's gone to Anglamaru, or whatever that one is called in Spain, where they take over like the whole little village for that comic convention. He's been, not this year because it's going on this weekend as we record, but he's been to Thought Bubbles, which is the big convention over in England right now. So you get a little bit different perspective as an American that has gone overseas to these. But I am much more interested at this point into everything that happens up to the time that the book is published. Because the published book I have been reading for 40 years. So I have lots of exposure to all different sorts. I still read comic books. I read way too many, as a matter of fact. Just this week I posted my 1600th of my 500 book challenge on Twitter earlier this week. And it was actually, I think it was a crowd-funded book that I read that put me over 1600 for the year. So I read comics, but in between, I've been reading either about people. I went on a big Trina Robbins kick right before she passed away, unfortunately, and continued on a little while. And then these comic zines are something that really has been piquing my imagination. So I've really been looking after those. There's a whole lot of digital ones. Probably I've subscribed to 15 or 20 digital zines, but I get another 6 or 8 that are paper, just because I actually want to hold those to read them to get that effect. The others, I'm just interested in keeping up with the contemporary zines. And along that front, I probably have run across about 30 to 35 different comic book fanzines that are currently being published, for anybody that's curious how big that scene is. That's what I've run across, is about 30, about 35, maybe 37 different ones that come out a year, every 6 months or less. Just depends. So That's where most of my reading has been.
Cool, cool. I looked up the comic blogger to see if I could find out where it was published, and it doesn't say on the
Hmm.
website. So
Okay. Yeah, I've gotten them, and I noticed then I want to say like Kansas City or something like that, but I don't remember.
I'm amazed at how many artists and writers come from the Kansas City area.
Mhm. I don't know why. Maybe it's economics. I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I know that at one point, um, I remember when Scotty Young, who was living in Chicago, he moved. I don't think it was to Kansas City. I think it was back home to like Tennessee or somewhere like that. But it was
Mhm.
a smaller town, obviously not Chicago, and he did it for economic reasons. He's like, I can make the same amount of money living here,
Right.
but spend way less on rent and gas and groceries and all that junk.
Right. Yeah, with everything being so electronic nowadays, it's
Yep.
you know, obviously we have artists that live in Brazil that never come to the
Yeah.
US, in
Yep.
Japan that never
Yep.
come to the you know. So, yeah, I would imagine, you know, if you can maintain the internet connection, moving to a mountain somewhere by yourself would be uber cheap to live, you know.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I want to say there's some artist. I can't remember his name off the top of my head now, but he's a fairly well-known artist. I feel like I read something a year or two back that he is basically traveling the country in a Winnebago, and he does all his art digitally and sends
Wow,
it in
okay.
from wherever he's at in the country.
Okay.
It's pretty neat.
Yep,
All right, that was some banter, people.
that was.
It's good banter.
Alrighty, guys. Today we're going to be looking at the Invisible Luthor. I can't say it that way. His name is Luther. I'm sorry. The Invisible Luther, which is the first story from Superman number 10. It's written for us by Jerry Siegel, penciled and inked by Leo Nowak. Superman 10 has a cover date of May-June 1941 with an on-sale date approximated of March 5th, 1941. And both of those pieces of information are courtesy of Mike's Amazing World of Comics. So, for those of you that don't have the story, listen up. Because Clark Kent witnesses a bank disappear from sight and then rematerialize, having been robbed. Soon, the city's water supply, here's another story, second one in a row with water supply issues. The city's water supply also vanishes. A mysterious voice from an invisible plane. Well, how can you tell it's an invisible plane if you haven't seen it? Okay, anyways, from an invisible plane tells Superman about a demand for 100 million. For those of you that are watching now, of course, the podcast, you can't see this. I'm doing my best Michael Myers impression. $100 million in order to return the water. Clark Kent informs the mayor about the demands of the unknown crook. The city decides to allow Superman to deliver the money, but the money itself is fake. When the Man of Steel delivers the money, he learns that Luthor is the crook, but is also working with someone else. Superman plays possum so that he can trail Luthor to his partner. The trail leads him to Bob Dunning, who planned on using the money to cover a stock manipulation scam. Superman smashes the machine that made the water disappear and captures Dunning, but Luthor escapes in the invisible. And again, how do you know that that's what if it's invisible? Anyways,
Right.
so that's what happened. So now, we talked about it last episode. For those of you that listened last episode, some big things that we have been wanting and are a fan of occur finally in this story. The been a fan of, been wanting both, I guess, to see Luthor again. We're both we like what Luthor represents based on more contemporary Superman.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've been wanting and waiting for his appearances, these first, initial appearances, because we know what that leads to ultimately. So right now, I think we may be definite fans of whenever Luthor is in the story. I definitely will say that I am.
I am too. Yeah.
So it's good to see him back. I do like the way that the story ended, because it ended in that superhero supervillain kind of ending for next time, and that's not necessarily been something that we've been seeing happen a lot in Superman stories. It's been very one and doney. You not Dunning, he was the bad guy, but one and done kind of things where the mobsters that were involved, they either died or we saw them taken by the police, so we know that that's the end of it. Eventually, of course, it'll get to be the point where supervillains, you never see the end of them. They manage to escape, they manage to be released. I don't know when the last time a supervillain actually did his time, if ever. So they're always out early,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and that'll one of the quote unquote, I guess, drawbacks to superhero comics is that, really the bad guy is never punished. Well, no, because we need him for the next time we need him, so that he's available. Yeah. So, the other thing is how Superman manages to move in the air. That this has been much discussed by us up till this point. Again, comparatively, from the beginning, when he just jumped, he leaped from point to point, kind of like what now we see the Hulk do in Marvel comics.
Right.
That's pretty much how the Hulk does it. But for Superman to start that way to now, man, now he flies through space and flies through time and flies around the world and he flies. He just doesn't,
Yeah.
You don't see him run that often, although in the 60s you did see him run quite a bit, him and the Flash actually. But he doesn't even run that much. He just flies. And who can blame him? I mean, if I could fly, heck yeah, I'd go everywhere I needed to go by flying. That's absolutely what I would do.
Yeah.
So, now I saw a panel, and I pointed it out last episode, that I thought really signified Superman flying to me. Steven indicates that there is a panel here, and I believe I'll mention this other thing too here, but I believe it's the panel after he has ripped the fire hydrant out of the ground to see if the water is flowing. Yeah, I'll get back to that in a minute. But Superman is in the air, and he's just in the air, and his cape is kind of floating up behind him. There are no right-left speed lines. There are no up-down speed lines to show that he is falling like typically people do when they jump. They come back down. Well, in this particular panel, there is a swoop for where he has moved into. Oh, that was weird. Let me check my recording here, guys. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the upper right-hand panel there.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this, I'm sharing my screen. This is actually a page. It's a page from the book. It's page 5. It's page 5 of the story. But this page actually comes from an article that talks about the first time he flies.
Yeah. Okay. So, there is nothing there. And the main thing is there is nothing there to indicate any movement. So here's a point. Physics says that there is a moment when you jump, when you are weightless. It's a very short, specific moment when your momentum up has ceased before your momentum down starts. There's a fraction of whatever amount of time when you are weightless in between up and down. That could be what they are drawing in this panel. And
yes.
it would indicate nothing different from what we have been told or have learned. So I can very quickly debunk exactly what this panel is supposedly showing us simply by stating that unique aspect of physics, of objects in motion and gravity and everything like that. It was captured at that particular moment when the upward and downward momentum both equals 0. And so it looks like he's floating, because that's what it looks like in this panel. It looks like he's floating. There. Doesn't signify he's flying.
Nope. And let me, so I got this article from 2022. It's off the Superman homepage. But it says the same thing I have read from any other article I've ever read about when in the comics does Superman first fly. So in the article, it says Nowak drew several panels in which Superman appears to be hovering in midair rather than in mid-leap. In the top right panel, in the page below, which is the page I'm sharing on the screen, you can see Superman with clouds behind him and buildings below appearing to be casually floating. There's no movement to his cape, and there are no action lines indicating movement. So we talked a little bit about this in the last episode. It's great that they're finally coming out to say he's flying, but to use that one panel as the definitive proof, when go back and listen to the previous episode when we talk about some of the stuff he did in that issue, especially what Ed pointed out with him jumping out of a window of the top floor of a building, falling and arcing so that he lands in basically the lobby of the building.
Right.
He sails through the door at the bottom of the building, and this is not a building that is wider at the bottom than it is at the top.
No.
So again, it's great that we no longer have to start going, all right, he's flying here. We can just assume from this point on that he's flying and never have to have the argument again. But I feel that we have to talk about why it took this long for somebody to admit it, and why this issue. Why is this the definitive proof? I don't get it.
I don't know. And why could they not have said he was flying before? I mean, what was the problem with 30s and 40s a character flying? I don't know. I don't know why they held off so long. You know, this is 10 issues of his book with 3 to 4 stories per issue, and high 30s of issues of action with 1 story each. So you're talking. So you're probably talking 70 to 80 different stories of Superman so far, counting appearances in other books. Okay, he's flying. See, that's a definite there.
Yeah. So I kind of want to mention a couple other quick things from the article. If you're watching the video, I am now sharing a page from, this is, dang it. This is Superman number 30. Got a cover date of September.
Mitzi there?
Yeah.
Okay.
This has got a cover date of September 1944. It's Mixie's Pitlick's first appearance. And on this page, it looks like it's the first page, the splash page. Mixie's Pitlick is flying backwards. It looks like he's just laying on his side, but he's flying. And Superman is flying after him, and Superman is saying, I thought I was the only one who could fly. I thought I was the only one who could fly. And this apparently, according to this article, is the first time, even though we now say he is flying back in 1941 in issue number 9, it's not until issue 30 that anybody, even Superman himself, even mentions that what he's doing is flying.
I don't understand.
I have one more thing to share. It's taking me a second to do that, so I'll probably edit all this out, me going blah, 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 blah. So this is the cover to a British magazine called Triumph. This has got a date of an on sale date of August 5th, 1939. It's issue number 772. And it features, if you're looking at the cover, an image of Superman flying into space away from Earth. This is the first time, apparently, in media, or at least in publicated artistic media, that shows Superman as flying.
I don't get that he's flying there either.
Again, based on everything we've read up to this point in Golden Age Superman, this could just be him jumping as well. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I just don't understand these examples that people are using to say Well, he's not flying here, but he is flying here. It's like they're the same thing.
And not only that, my question is, well, why is this one accepted and this one is not?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay. So, there's several shenanigans that go on across Metropolis with invisibleness. The bank is held up by somebody that's invisible, but you can see the piece that they're using, the weapon, the sidearm that they've got. Clark outside notices that from the bottom up, the building is disappearing. And I like the way that panel is drawn to kind of signify that.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Now, how he knows, or we know, or whatever, that it is after a robbery that the building rematerializes, I don't know. I think that's just what someone is assuming from having read this story. I don't know.
No, on the next page, he comes back to the building and says that it's materialized again.
But we don't know when the robbery was taking place necessarily amongst the appearing aspects of the building.
Yeah.
So, he could have done all of this and then got outside and made the building disappear and reappear to throw people off or something. I don't know. But Clark goes in, talks to him, and finds out about the disappearing this, and he saw the disappearing building, and so all of these invisible things. Goes to the chief there at the paper, and you indicated no face. You only see him from the back.
Yeah, I'd start paying attention to that.
Clark gets assigned the story. And there's a panel here on the next page where he has changed back into Superman. And it says, down to the distant street plummets the amazing Man of Steel. But it just looks like he's fallen to me.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It just looks like he's just thrown himself off the building and he's just like, okay.
Yeah, because he's practically facing up. He's like he's lying on his back. It's like he's free falling from an airplane, and he's doing the thing that free fallers do, and they just lay on their back basically, and let it happen. So actually what it looks like, if you take out that entire background and replace it with a wrestling ring and sit somebody underneath him, like he's getting ready to do
he's
a
dropping an elbow on him. Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Absolutely he is.
And it's I don't know if wrestling was like that back then, but you could almost assume that the guy used that as a reference to draw that panel. Somebody throwing an elbow like that.
So word has also gotten out that and it's really what pushes Superman to become involved and start to look into things. Not that everything being invisible wasn't enough, but word has come through that Metropolis is being held hostage via its water supply. Somebody has cut off water to the entire city and demanded money. Now, a couple things about the money. Initially, they want $1 million to turn the water back on. 1941. $1 million equals $21,473,741 today. So that is the ransom for.
They stole $1 million from the bank.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, and so that's how much it would equal. To get the water turned back on, I'm sorry, they wanted $100 million.
100 million. You got to do that.
Which would be $2 billion.
Wow.
100, would be $2,175,503.
That's a lot of money.
Let's see, wait a minute. $2,175,503,546. So that is, so they stole $21.5 million in today's money. And then when they cut off the water supply, they ransomed the water supply for Metropolis for $2.175 billion, which, actually that sounds kind of reasonable. If you want water turned back on in New York City, I want $2 billion.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. That sounds like, So I just, anytime older things like this throw out money, I always look to see if that number was really significant. Either then or now. Now, of course, these sums are very significant. So I can only imagine that using the numbers they did back then would have the same weight of significance as
Yeah.
what this is to us. I mean, back in 1941, I would think $100 million is a phenomenal amount of
Oh
money.
yeah. I mean, when
So,
he says in the comic that he wanted 100 million, I mean, I didn't look it up or anything, but I was like, holy crap, I bet that's like $1 billion nowadays.
well, how much does it take to run Metropolis at the time? I bet
Yeah.
significantly less than that.
Yeah.
So they're
Probably.
you know they're giving away 3 or 4 years worth of operating money there for the
Yeah.
city. So now that is what gets Superman active. The water supply is being held ransom. So what he does in kind of a similar, let me pick up this train engine and turn it perpendicular to the tracks and set it back down. He wants to check and see if the water really has been shut off to the city. So when he gets down to the ground after this, just throwing himself off the building, he lands and he rips a fire hydrant out of the street. He just rips and just leaves it laying there. And he's like, huh, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess they did turn the water off. And then he goes to do other things. And I'm
Yep.
like, dog,
Uh,
what about the
yeah.
big hole in the water system you just
Uh,
made?
all I could think of was how water is going to come shooting out of that thing once they get it back on.
And
Because
how do you fix that? I mean,
right, yeah,
that's
he could have just opened up the fire hydrant. He didn't need to rip it out of the ground.
yep. Yeah, he doesn't have to have the big wrench. He can just use his
Yeah,
fingers. And,
exactly.
righty tighty, lefty loosey, and he can just undo the yeah. But no,
I
he rips the whole thing out of the street.
Yeah, I could only assume that maybe Clark isn't that smart and doesn't know how you open up one of those.
I don't know. That was funny though. So once again, he now this time though he sees a plane, and I thought that the plane was kind of watching him. Now that you find out later on who the bad guy is, I truly believe that that's what this plane is doing. Is it's kind of searching for Superman
Yeah.
because Luthor knows that
Oh,
that
yeah.
is who ultimately he's going to go up against.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's the thing I loved most about this story is that it felt like Lex Luthor because not only is he doing this crazy sci-fi type scheme because he's got people who he can turn things invisible, blah 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 blah. He's also taken Superman into account and he's done things, he's put things in place to account for Superman's involvement. And I think is the first time we've really seen that in this book so far.
And he is messing with Superman too. I
Yes.
mean, he knows that Superman will get involved, and because of that, he is messing with him. He is
Yep.
purposefully doing things that Superman can't or won't immediately be able to overcome. So
Right.
it puts Superman on the defensive, puts him at a loss as to what to do. So he goes up to check out this airplane, and it disappears. It goes invisible again. Talks to him a couple times, which you would think that Superman would. This is something that I wish Superman would do. Superman needs to carry around a pouch of marbles. And when somebody holds a gun to Lois's head, if he just reaches in that pack and picks up a marble and flicks it at the person, problem done. Here, it's an invisible plane. I don't know where it is. Well, somebody is talking. Well, just take another one of your marbles and just flick it in the area that the voice is coming from.
Yep.
It'll shoot right through the plane, and I'm sure it will become visible because you'll do something damage to it. So, yeah, I think that would be cool, too. It's kind of a Superman backup. He has a bag of marbles, and he just flicks them at people. Yeah.
And they all have little Superman shields on them. They're red. Or they're blue with
like
little Superman
Batman's
shields. Yeah.
bat-shaped boomerangs and things. Yeah, yeah.
With this scene here, when we first they refer to it as a helicopter plane.
Mm-hmm.
This invisible plane, this voice talking to Superman, it makes this demand for the ransom and blah, blah, blah. Even at one point in the issue, he refers to the bad guy, since he hasn't seen him, just as the voice.
Mm-hmm.
It's at that point that I really wished they would have named this story in the
voice?
collection. Yeah, well, just something that didn't give away the fact that it's Lex Luthor.
Right. Yeah.
because when that reveal comes, I would have been this whole time I would have been like, ooh, who is this? Is this somebody new? Is this somebody we have already met? Is this the Ultra Humanite? Is this Lex Luthor? And then when it was revealed, I would have been like, hey, but it's like, straight from the beginning that it's Lex Luthor because,
Yeah.
if you looked at the title of the story in the table of contents of the trade.
Right. Yeah. So the plane disappears. It quits talking, so Superman can't track it. And just goes. I guess it doesn't make any noise
It
because he
must
can't
not.
track the plane by noise.
Yeah.
Also, I was just sitting here wondering. I wonder if at this time Wonder Woman has her invisible jet yet. I don't know if she does or not, or when.
See, I was going to use her as an example. When you say, how do you know the plane is invisible? It's like, well, if you can see the person driving it, like Wonder Woman, obviously Luthor knows that if you're going to make the airplane invisible, make everybody inside invisible too.
Yeah, apparently you have to make them invisible too. So yeah, it's not just three people moving through the air, or it's
it's like looking up, going, I see Wonder Woman's behind.
Okay, so Superman, he's like, well, I can't, there's nothing else to Superman right now, so he hops back down to the streets. I like the different colored subway tile here in the bathroom. Very, very trendy, where he's putting on his suit here at the bottom of the page. Putting on his Clark Kent glasses, and he goes and relays the what do you call it? Hostage, when you
ransom.
Ransom. There we go. Gives the officials in Metropolis the ransom information that the voice gave him, and everything. I agree with the dude here that's with the mayor. Everything that Clark Kent does makes me suspect that Superman has something to do with it, because it just. The way Clark presents it just is so fishy. And he maintains the city really needs to do it, or they'll just be, sore out of luck, or what. And I'm like, but you're Superman. Where is that positivity of being able to overcome anything? I just thought it was an interesting tact for Clark to take when he's giving the ransom information.
It's like, hey, I know I'm just a reporter, but you have to put together $100 million and leave it on top of a building for Superman. And he's not the bad guy, and if it wasn't for the fact that the mayor decides that it's going to be fake money, I was really scratching my head up until that point, because I'm like, why are they just taking his word for it? It's not like the demand was, if the mayor had been outside and saw all that and Mr. Mayor, you must give us 100,000,
Sure.
But no, just some schlub reporter off the street walks in and says, well, and it's even, he's not like, this voice told me. It was Superman told me that a voice told him, and they're like, okay.
And this panel here where Clark Kent is walking away, and he says out loud, he overhears what the mayor's plan is after he has left. And as he's walking away, he says out loud to us, so they're planning a double cross. I'm sorry to hear that for their sake. Yeah. It's like, dog, you're Superman. You can, so.
Yeah, that doesn't make, he's the first one that's going to give in to terrorist demands,
As he continues walking away, I'm sure that if the voice is tricked, his vengeance will be awful. That leaves the problem squarely up to me to saving Metropolis from a terrible fate. Rests in my hands. Verbiage doesn't make sense there. But so it's like, well, it's too bad that they're going to do that. And now I guess because they're going to trick the voice and he's so mighty, Superman's going to have to do something.
Yeah, that's exactly how I took that as well. It's like, well, I guess I don't want to have to intervene, but I guess
exactly.
I have to.
Yeah. I don't want to have to Superman, but they're going to make me Superman. It's like, what are you doing?
It's like, I'm willing to be Superman to drop off the money, but now I have to take an extra step and actually catch the bad guy.
Oh yeah. I guess they're doing that to ratchet up the tension of the story, or but yeah,
It
I
makes
just
me
thought,
wonder if if they weren't going to use fake money, if they were really and he hadn't heard that, if he truly as Superman would have delivered the money and then just went, all right, I'm
uh,
washing my hands. I'm going to go home and wait for that water to come back on.
there you go. Everybody did what they're supposed to. We're all good now. So yeah, yeah,
There would be if that was the case, then it's like every day some new terrorist would come in and
yep.
you know, I have taken away your electricity. Ha ha ha! Give me $100 million. Yeah.
So we get some panels now of how bad things are, no water, and then some issues at the water plant here. Finally, Clark decides to Superman some more, and he's kind of waiting, or no, he's not waiting around. He goes to the water station to see what he can do to facilitate this latest issue, which was some of their equipment disappearing. Everything is going invisible. So
I,
on his,
I I love that. I think that's just one of those things that obviously Luther had these various back. It's like not only am I going to create this machine that makes the water stop, I'm also going to, in case the folks at the water plant figure it out and they start fixing their machine. Oh, well, I'll just make it invisible so they can't see what they're working on.
there you go.
It's like that's Lex Luthor. He thinks of everything. It's not just one plan. Once, he has all these dominoes set up beforehand. That's the way Luthor's supposed to be. And it's nice to see that they're doing that all the way back in 1941.
Right, from some of his initial appearances, he's being used that way. Yeah. So Superman on the way to the water plant is intercepted by the mysterious helicopter. So now it's a helicopter. It's not a helioplane or whatever they called it before. Now it's just a straight up helicopter. Still invisible. The voice is still talking to him. And what he doesn't tell him, he just badgers Superman here, basically. Yeah. So disappears. Ultimately, though, Superman goes and he gets the ransom money, and he goes to not the meeting place, but kind of a waypoint where he has been told once he gets the money, show up here, and he does. And there, the voice from the invisible plane tells him where to take the money. It's a canyon, the Cave of Winds in some canyon somewhere outside of Metropolis. Maybe this is the portion of Metropolis that got bombed last story, and these are like the remains of, that suburb of Metropolis that got bombed. I don't know.
Maybe.
So he goes, drops the money off, and while he's there, the voice materializes not from like an invisible, just in the air, but from a fiery kind of spherish kind of thing, like the voice is in the fire, or the fire is in between the voice and Superman, something like that. But it's in this cave.
Does the voice from the fire say anything like "I am he who is known as I am," or however he says it?
Yes,
God says
that's where it starts, and yeah. In the midst of talking, Superman finally decides to act, and he jumps directly into the middle of this flaming whatever it is, and finds out that, however, he gets past the flame, whether it's a flame bubble or a flame wall or whatever. On the other side of this is someone in an asbestos suit. He rips the head, the hat and mask off of the suit, and finds out finally that it's Luthor. So this is, I don't know how many pages into the story, probably 2/3 of the way into the story.
Page 9.
And 9 of what, like 13?
13, yeah.
And we finally find out that it's Luthor. So that's 75% of the story already, or right? 3, 4, yeah, roughly 70%, something like that. So yeah, like you brought up, if they hadn't spoiled it in the name of the story in the compendium, of course, when these first came out, they didn't have titles. We would have gone most of the story before we found out truly that it was Luther. So yeah, that would have, they kind of messed up that reveal by naming the story
Yeah.
that way.
They
How,
could have
how
just,
about who is the voice?
yeah, or just the invisible foe.
Yeah. So, so we finally see that it's Luther. He's unmasked. Superman's gonna Superman all over him, but Luther's like, haha, no, you won't. I have an entourage. And Superman is attacked by, what does it say, 20? Yeah,
Yep.
20 armed thugs step into the cave. But they're not just armed, okay? They all have grenades. So simultaneously, which is pretty remarkable, they all pull the grenades and pull the pins and throw them at Superman. And so this massive explosion goes off in the cavern that they're in, and it buries just Superman. It doesn't bring the whole cavern down. Luther is not hurt. The thugs are not hurt wherever physically, they are. But just the portion of the cave where Superman is what falls, and it falls just on Superman. So
That's how it works.
that's like drone targeting
Yep.
nowadays. Only they did it back then with grenades and
That's
throwing
right.
them by hand.
That's some
that's impressive.
accurate. Oh, yeah.
That is, yeah. So I think Superman was just kind of, again, and he says that he did this a little bit later on the story here, but I think he was just playing possum. He gets buried like physically, but not the buried that does him any damage, of course, at all, because he's Superman. So he says he burrowing his way out of the solid. No, it's not solid rock because it's a cave in. Yeah, so it's not quite as dramatic as they made it sound. But Superman pops back up to resume his attack. And when he does, this time Luther has a weapon that he shoots Superman with that knocks him out. Says it's some kind of energy weapon. It says here a beam. Here we go. The bolt was powerful enough. So it's some kind of energy weapon that he apparently has developed that he felt would hurt Superman, would knock him out, would injure him somehow. Come to find out, though, here, Superman does say that he was playing possum because he pretended to be passed out so that he could overhear them talking about what the next steps of their plan were, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like, well, if you just get up and beat everybody up and defeat them here, there is no next part of the plan. It doesn't matter. But,
Yep.
We still have a couple pages to fill, so it does matter. Superman had to fake it and let him go, essentially. Everybody goes their separate ways, and Superman follows Luther.
They don't go their separate ways. The other guys want their part of the money.
You're right. I'm sorry. Luther kills him.
Yeah.
Yeah, just with the same gun that he used on Superman. So it's like, well if this is going to put Superman down.
No, there's a switch on the wall. This is, again, showing how prepared Luther is. The floor is electrified. He's wearing insulated shoes. Okay. And so when they demand their part of the money, he flicks a switch. Everybody in that room is electrocuted to death except for him. And then he's like, all right, now I got my money. I can go meet with the important man.
That would have juiced Superman too.
Yeah, but that's true.
Yeah. So, and here we kind of find out, although Luther said something earlier, but apparently Luther is not the one in charge or solely in charge. There is another accomplice that is equally as involved as he is. So yeah, here Superman wakes up. No longer any need to play possum. So if he hadn't played possum, he could have saved 20 people from being killed. Doesn't really weigh on his conscience. It doesn't seem. I was greatly tempted to make the mass murderer pay for his villainy, but I must bide my time. Wait until I learn the identity of the important man Luther hinted at, and then.
Well, and if Luther hadn't shot him, so it kind of worked in Superman's favor, because the panel right before Luther shoots him, Superman is charging Luther and he tells him, but I won't fail. I'm going to give that neck of yours a well-deserved massage. So he was going to choke him out. That's what he was going to do. He was going to strangle Luther to death. Luther shoots him. He plays possum and then learns there's another guy involved. And I think that's at a point where he's probably thinking to himself, maybe I should stop just trying to kill people.
Yeah. And I guess that would be enough for him to hold back, because he's like,
Yeah.
well, it's not just Luther, it's somebody else. So
Yeah.
I need to keep working to find out who the somebody else is. We're told that Luther enters a large laboratory in the center of the mountain. So this is the Cave of the Winds mountain. Their laboratory is there. You have the money. I don't think he ever says anything who this person is, or
no, all we get is the guy's name, Bob Dunning, and that he it's like he lost a bunch of money gambling or the stock market or something.
Stock. I guess he took to cover up our fake stock manipulation, which could be anything. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but that's why Luther wanted the ransom money from Metropolis, to cover up whatever stock dealings. Luther finds out that the money is faked, like we knew from way back that's what the mayor was going to do. And as Luther is jumping to enact his final revenge, which is, I don't think he actually tells us.
He's going to do something with the machine. He's going for the machine, said, I'll teach him, basically. And the other guy's like, no, you'll wreck the city. That's all we get.
Yeah. So, and that's when Superman finally catches up to him, knocks Luther away, breaks up the machine, both of which you would expect. Now, on this page, middle panel, do you notice anything about this ship that Luther, does it jog anything in your memory?
Oh, hell yeah. He's used one of these before. It's very Flash Gordon-ish.
Yes, that is what it occurred to me. This looks exactly like something that I remember seeing from the movie.
But I think he's either he or the Ultra Humanite. It may have been Luther in the underground or the underwater city. I feel like he's used a ship similar to this before.
Okay. Yeah, it's very very striking design for a.
Oh, it's totally Flash Gordon.
Yeah, a rocket ship. I mean it flies, but it doesn't look like it has wings like an airplane, so it must be just jet propelled. So Superman lets Luther go. So this is where I said that I liked the way it ended, because Luther has gotten away, which means he will be back. It's a much more believable he'll be back than if Superman had captured him and taken him to jail.
Yeah.
Not that they ever explain that, but it's like, well, if the bad guy gets away, well, it makes sense that he's going to come back. If you take him to jail, you have to explain how he got out, which they never do. So it's like, okay, so this is the start of the never-ending supervillain getting away, and he'll ultimately come back at some point to plague Superman again. Yep. So that's cool.
That was very much one of those "we'll meet again, Superman" type of things. You know?
Yeah. So that's cool. Although this story ends not with a comparison competition between Clark and Lois putting in the story for the paper. They finally got away from that in this story. It's still kind of an amusing kind of stop. The guy Dunning, who Superman took to the police captain, he's not even done with his story, and Superman says he's got to go. Just the whole thing is just kind of a wah kind of funny thing there.
It doesn't make the police look very good, because the guy is telling the police officer, wait, I haven't finished confessing. And the police officer tells him, you've already said enough to send you to prison for life. I think any prosecutor would have smacked that guy in the face and said, they can never tell you enough. If they've got more to tell you, get everything that they say because you never know what's going to happen. And then, yeah, what Superman's saying as he dives out the window, I'm off in search of more adventure.
Yeah. So, and that's where we end our latest Luther escapade.
The only problem I had with this story is I think that they missed a good opportunity to make Luther's partner feel it would have been a better reveal. What they should have done first, it should have been the mayor. The mayor should not have made the money fake. It would make more if this was the mayor, it would have made more sense for the mayor to have agreed so quickly to hand over this money because it's going to end up going to him, and it should have been real money, and then the reveal of who Luther's partner was should have been the mayor. That would have been more interesting than, Luther refers to him as Mr. Important or the important man.
Right.
And then when we meet him, it's like, it's Bob Dunning. And you're like, who?
He's the next door neighbor to Ted Allen.
Yeah, I guess. So, yeah. That's a callback to the previous episode, folks.
Yeah, where they dropped a name and you're like, who is that? Well, as far as we know, nobody. It's Ted Allen.
Well,
it's Rob Dunning.
Yeah, if you're gonna reveal something like that, it needs to be somebody we know. It's not it. It's Bob Dunning. What? Who? And then they have to explain really quickly why he's there. If it was, I don't know. They could have still used the explanation that the mayor has been working with Luther to make money through fakery in the stock market. But since we met the mayor at the beginning of the story, it would have been better for him to be and then to call him the important man, it makes you feel like that's the guy that's in charge.
Right.
But obviously he's not. He just came up with the idea and then sat back and let Luther do all the work, basically.
Yeah, they wanted to use Luther, but then they introduced some other elements, and it's like, but they weren't important, so why did you
honestly, the only reason I can think of, because there really is no reason for this guy to be here, except Superman is able to deliver a bad guy to the police. They're able to let Luther go to come back at a later date, but Superman still is able to hand a bad guy over to the police. That's the only reason I can think of, which still would have been better if it was the mayor.
Oh, I agree.
But otherwise, I really enjoyed this one. As soon as I saw his name in the title, I was super excited, and I tried not to get too excited because I didn't want to hype myself up for a story that ended up being crap. But it was a good story. It was a lot of fun. All the just Luther's plan, how everything, it didn't feel like Luther had sat down and constructed this elaborate plan, but it's like, regardless of what Luther had thrown at him, he had a way to counteract it. And I really dug that about that character. Yeah. And him getting away in his Flash Gordon rocket with a door that comes out of the mountain that way. It just, that feels like freaking old Superman stories to me. And
good stuff. There's slowly but surely we're starting to be introduced to those things that make Superman familiar. So it's not as no pun intended, not as alien as in the golden age, because we're starting to see things that we know and recognize as Superman.
Well, and if I can take us back to what page is this? Page 6. Those two panels that let us in on how the water shortage is affecting the city with the lady who brings her kid in for some kind of operation. We don't know what kind of operation it is, but apparently the kid is bad enough that she has to carry him, but they can't do the operation because there's no water for steam to sterilize the instruments. And then as she's leaving, the kid asks for water because apparently the kid's thirsty, and you'll have to get some water later. Of course, I'm thinking, is there going to be a later? He can't be operated on. What's going to happen to this poor kid?
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's another one of those things that, just like the fire hydrant and the train in the previous episode, we don't know what's going to happen. And I would like to see somebody take that and maybe, I don't know, turn that kid into a supervillain after he's an adult, because maybe he lost his eyesight or both of his legs or something because he couldn't get the operation.
Well, something that would be cool is for someone to write a series about these early adventures of Superman from the people's point of view that were affected by what was going on. And so if it was a reporter from a competing paper in another city coming to Metropolis to find out what's going on with this mystery person, and through the course of the book, they interviewed the people, whether they be the bad guys or the public works crew that had to clean up, or this mom that got in touch with him because she knew he was doing this and she wanted to make people aware that her son was not able to, because of the water shortage, things like that. It would be interesting. I don't know how long you could make something like that last as far as people buying it, but it would be kind of an interesting take as far as retcons go, because people are all the time trying to find places in between that they can write and expand on the story. And something like that, you have you could start at the very beginning and just look through the issues and find something, send your reporter to go talk to the taxi company in Metropolis about not being able to ply their trade because the taxi cab war. Products not being able to be delivered.
Yeah, talk to the woman. I mean, if we're going back to the beginning, they could talk to the woman that he saved from death row.
Okay.
And that they could talk to the guy who worked for the governor when Superman came in and tore the door off the hinges to get the governor out of bed.
Right. Yeah. All of these things. It's like, well, we don't believe that there is a Superman. That's impossible. But things have been happening. So let's interview people that were witnesses and get more information about that.
You know, it would be really fun, since I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts, make a true crime podcast set in this time, and they're trying to unravel the mystery of Superman.
It's a dramatization, talking to these people. Yeah, that would be something interesting.
That'd be fun.
I don't really have anything else.
Well, I think DC needs to hire the two of us, obviously, because we have great ideas for their stuff.
Yep, we could. I don't know if they would sell, but it would be something different from what they're doing. So
here's the thing: we're smart enough that we know who to put on these projects so that they would sell. We'd pick, if we could pick anybody, we'd get the right people in. I want to know what happened. I want to be there when that fire hydrant starts spewing water again. Because that there's city guys standing around just pissed off because all this water is just shooting out in the air. And it's not like, again, they can just go, oh, well, let's just turn the hydrant off. No, they've got to plug it up, first of all, because the whole pipe,
they've got to find a way to turn it off to do anything. So how do you, it's like, it's undoubtedly with a hydrant on it, it's a main. So we have to go back and we have to turn off the main on this whole side of the town.
Yep.
We just got the water back. Right. And that's going to be a mess.
There's probably people out there gathering water.
Yes,
kids
because they haven't had water.
Yeah.
They're like, bring your wagon, bring your trash bags.
These people are showing up to fix it. They're like, we just got back from getting a train engine that was sitting perpendicular on a bridge.
There you go. Just outside of town. It was,
that's a callback to the previous episode, folks. You got to listen to all the episodes to get all of our jokes.
In order. Right. Yep.
That's right. I don't know that I have anything else to say either. It was, is this our first time with Jim Nowak? Artist?
Was he involved
Leo
in the previous?
Leo Nowak.
Was he involved in the previous? No,
No,
Wayne Boring. Okay. Yeah, it may be.
I really enjoyed it. He's got a very smooth. I always want to use CC Beck as
Oh,
a
okay.
example because of the faces, but he's got a nice smooth thick line that I really enjoy. Doesn't add there are certain panels where uh, did we list the inker? He inked it himself apparently, but
Yeah.
there's certain panels where I think maybe the inks are a bit too thick. But there's other panels, and I'm just looking at the very last page, the very last panel, the cop. There's just something about there's just so much open blue space. It reminds me a lot of the way Mike Allred draws nowadays. It's just I really dig that kind of art.
Hmm.
There was another panel that I would use for an example of that way back at the beginning. Well, most of the beginning. It's all really good. I'm really a big fan of this guy just from this one
Um,
issue.
Speaking of Mike Allred, did you see where the um, Madman compendiums, the omnibuses, are going to start dropping starting early in 2025 in softcover editions for
Oh no.
$49.95 a piece.
Sweet. I
Hmm.
have the first 3 digitally. I got
Okay.
them. They had some big sales going on a while back, but I don't have any of the ones. I think there are 2 or 3 others since, but
Yeah, I think there's like 5 total or maybe 6 total, but yeah, they're going to start dropping those in softcover finally,
I have
starting
the
next year.
I have the first GI Joe compendium that they just put together for the image with the first 50 Marvel issues. It's on paperback, and I have that on my Christmas list. So
Cool. I
cross on
heard
my
somebody say
fingers.
that was on newsprint.
Oh, maybe.
I
I don't know.
heard somebody mention that was, or I read somebody mention that was on newsprint in that compendium. So I was like, wow, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
I have that, and then the new Titan put out their first Conan Marvel collection hardback.
oh, okay.
And it's like the first 25 issues or so. I've got that on my list as well. We'll see. Cross
Cool
fingers.
beans. Cool beans. Okay. I guess, guys, at this point, that is probably everything that we have or even wanted to say about this issue. So, definitely want to thank everybody for listening live. All 0 of you. Thanks for that.
Sad.
And, well, yeah. And everybody that's listening to the podcast, that there are many more of you than listen to us live, and that's okay.
Though we do, I mean, here, I'll tell you what. Let me just real quick, let me go to the YouTube channel because it's only live streamed at YouTube. Let's see real quick. Trying to be quick because while we don't seem to get a lot of people who watch live,
They do watch it after the fact.
yeah, the previous one we did has gotten 18 views, and the one before that has 41 views.
Well, I guess you could
So
conceivably put it on and let it run in the background just like you would listen
yeah.
to a podcast.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
and you
so,
can listen to a lot of this stuff through YouTube Music now. So
okay. Okay. Alrighty, guys, all of you, thanks for listening. And so, until next week, I'm Ed. That is Steven. And this has been the Superman Super Show.
bye.
Ciao.
Gonna save this one. Gonna save it up. So this is 77. When you were talking about there in that episode about doing a book where people like a news reporter goes around and talks to all these people that have interacted with Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the lady with the kid from this issue and how that how that might have turned out with the kid and the operation and stuff. It made me think of a podcast I'm listening to right now, and I didn't want to take up any more time in the episode, but so of course you remember the Olympic bombing in '96 in Atlanta.
Yes.
They blamed Robert Jewell and ruined his freaking life, and then 6 months later went, oh no, it wasn't him. And then there were a series of bombs in Atlanta that happened afterwards. So I'm listening to a podcast about that. It's called Flashpoint, and there are 8 episodes. I think the 8th episode is the last one. I tend to wait with these documentary style podcasts. I tend to wait until the whole season's done anymore before I listen. I like to binge them.
Right.
But so in the second episode, so the first episode's all about the bombing at Centennial Park at the Olympics, and the second episode is about the second 2 bombs that they refer to as the twin bomb that goes off in an abortion clinic 6 months later. And so the guy who's the reporter, a lot of these like true crime history documentary podcasts anymore are done by reporters,
Right.
who have figured out a way to make an extra buck, but he's from Atlanta, and so he's narrating it all, but he's also talking to various people. So in this episode, in episode 2, he's got a guy on who had a couple of kids at a daycare center that was in the same building that got blown up, who for some reason or another that day he had to be somewhere early, and so he happened to pick up his girls early, and then as they were driving away or something, the building blew up, right? And a portion of the roof crushed the crib where his twins would have been had he not picked them up.
Okay.
But then he's also talking to this woman who was 17 at the time, who was in a relationship with a guy who was kind of a criminal, and she didn't want to be in the relationship, and he was a few years older than her, and she couldn't quite figure out how to get out of the relationship, and she ends up getting pregnant, and so she decides she wants to have an abortion, but she doesn't want to tell her mom. She's too young to have an abortion without parental consent, but she doesn't want to tell her mom because she knows her mom won't allow her to have the abortion. So her boyfriend that she doesn't want to be with, who got her pregnant, has enough of a criminal background that he's able to get her a fake ID. And so they set the appointment at this clinic, and it happens to be for the day after the bomb goes off. So she doesn't get the abortion because she can't, because the clinic blew up.
Right.
And so she doesn't know what to do, and she realizes she's going to have to tell her mom. And so she goes home, and she tells her mom, and her mom immediately says, well, you're getting an abortion. And she goes, what? She goes, you're getting an abortion. This will ruin your life. And so they make these appointments, and one of the first ones is to go to see the obstetrician. And she goes in and she gets the exam, and they're doing the ultrasound, and she's like, the moment they start doing the ultrasound is the moment I realize I'm keeping this baby. And that's when we learn that the guy narrating is the baby. Okay. And I'm like, whoa, because he's like, these bombs that went off, it's like, of course they're horrible. They killed people. He goes, but at the same time, if that bomb had not have gone off, she would have had the abortion. Right. I would not be here.
I would not have lived.
It was a pretty amazing little bit of a reveal there in that second episode. That
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. That's and those are the kind of revelations that you listen to stuff like that for.
Yeah.
That's what you're hoping to find.
Yep. Yeah, that's been a really good one. That I listened to. Matter of fact, I got to cancel that today. I got a free trial to a subscription to Wondery, which is one of those podcast conglomerate things, because they had a 4-episode podcast called the True History of Dracula. And it was mostly about the book, Bram Stoker's Dracula, but it was really interesting. But they did one of those things that I don't like. I have stuff that will go out for subscribers, but then go out to everybody else later.
Mm-hmm.
This one had episode 1 available to everybody. Episode 2, 3, and 4 only to subscribers. That drives me freaking nuts.
Subscribers, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm sure that eventually it would become available, but I thought, oh, I'll just do the free trial for a week and listen to them, and it was pretty good. But
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So Saturday.
Yes.
We'll do that Christmas story. And I say we don't live stream that one.
Okay.
That way we can just kind of drop it, and people will be like, whoa, it's the first time we've heard this.
Yep.
And
be like a Christmas present.
Yeah. Soon as I find out whether or not we'll go ahead and I guess just plan on the same time. But if I find out here within the next day or two, if I find out that she's not working that Saturday, if you want to go earlier, we can.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to be up anyway. I love to try to sleep in, but I'm up at 6 regardless. It seems like
if we go earlier, probably the earliest that I would really be able to is like 10 o'clock my time. I mean, not like
so it's like 9
earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's 9 your time. Yeah.
They do that.
I mean.
Yeah. The cats don't let me sleep in. They're used to, hello, the sun is up. Where's my food?
Yep. We have 2 indoors, and I am well aware of that. Yes.
Yep. But you love them, right?
Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't have it any other way.
I swear, though, I wake up every morning to a new wound on me, because they claw me up. So there's one that just likes to come over and while I'm sleeping, just, hey, and then run away. And I think I told my daughter the other day, it's like I'm looking at all these various scratches and scabs and stuff on me. And I'm like, man, if these would leave scars, I would look like Batman after he retires, because I'd just be covered in scars, basically.
And all you're exposed where you wear t-shirts or whatever. It's like,
Well, and I can't, like this shirt here, as soon as we're done, I got to go take it off. Because if I sit down, which I'm going to do to watch some TV, one of the cats will come sit on me, and then they'll try to make the biscuits and whatnot, and they'll put holes in the shirt. So they're
pick it. Yep.
Yeah, there are certain shirts that I've have so many now that have holes in them that I just have learned that, all right, this is I wear around the house shirt because the cat's it's already got holes in it. So
yeah. So you have like 3 wardrobes. You have the work wardrobe.
Yep.
You have the at home minus cats wardrobe, and the at home with cats wardrobe. And
exactly.
Keep them different. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah, and the at home with cats wardrobe is usually what I wear most of the time. Even if I'm even if I'm taking Ron to work, it's like if my wife was like, "Hey, can you pick up something to eat?" I'll be like, "Can I get it through drive-through? Because if I got to go in somewhere, I got to get dressed."
That's right. I'm dressed down, not just down, but
yeah, exactly. I'm not even like, a college student in their jammies that you see at a Walmart dressed. I'm like, I don't want to wear this. And I'm in the car, I'm fine. But if I got to get out. Yeah.
Can I go through the drive-through? Yep. That's a valid question. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes it's just because whether I have to get dressed or not, I just don't want to go in and talk to people.
Oh, well, that's me all the time. And as I sit here and do a podcast, I don't want to talk to people.
That's why we podcast. I
remember made for podcasting.
I remember talking to Peter Rios about it one of the times he was on one of my shows, and I said something about how I think he had mentioned maybe somebody else as a guest or something, and I'm like, yeah, maybe. I said I'm not good around people the first time. I said I have crippling social issues, and he goes, what? He said, what about you? I listen to your podcast. You got these weird fake commercials and you're doing all this crazy stuff. And I said, that's just me in a room by myself. I'm not interacting with anybody. That's completely different.
That's different.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been working on these Steven or Else episodes. I got 3 ready to go. I want to get 3 more done, and then that'll come out. And I figure if I put it on this feed, Steven or Else Media Presents, then I won't feel like if 6 are all I do, then 6 are all I do. Right? I'm not going to feel any pressure to, because I think that's why I ended up stopping in the first place. Because at one point I'm just like, I can't keep this up every week. I can't keep writing sketches and recording all that crap and editing it. But if I can spend 3 months putting 6 episodes together and then go, all right, well, if I don't do another 6 for 2 years, then that's fine.
Yeah. That's a season right there.
Yep.
Season whatever. And then the next season will be whatever the next number is, and it'll be whenever it is. That's yeah.
Oh, you know what? I didn't update you on the ElfQuest thing.
Okay.
It's not really it's not a good update. It's not a bad update. But so well, here, I'll tell you what. Let's stop streaming. All right, everybody. We're done streaming. Bye. I'm gonna stop the stream.